After breaking the two up, which took a lot of work to do, the three of us continue flying through the air for a few seconds until a large castle comes into sight. One clearly made out of blood metal and designed in a style similar to the nation that used to occupy Demon Isle before the demons. Satan brings us through an open window of the castle into a large throne room where a 3-meter-tall pool of blood stands in front of the throne like a mirror. The Oni then walks up to the raised dais and kneels in front of it, following which the pool of blood begins shifting until it turns into some sort of screen showing Gramps' throne room. And the very moment he sees me, Gramps begins smiling. I also notice Leonidas standing off to the side of Gramps' throne, likely not sitting on his own throne due to it being too far for the screen to show. Leonidas smiles at me as well and nods before Gramps says, "Young Blackthorn says you wish to make a bet, princess?" His formal mode is clearly activated, so I nod my head in return and answer, "Yes, I do." "Is it safe to assume you already know the basic contents of the bet?" "I do," he answers, his eyes narrowing slightly. "If I'm to understand this correctly, you wish to make a bet with us that you will return to Tartarus to fulfill all of your duties as the princess of the nation should Earth's forces fail to push us back to Demon Isle and the Arctic, and that we will retreat from Earth should you manage to do so?" "Yes, you understand it perfectly," I tell him with another nod. "But in addition to that, I would like to add on to it a little bit." Gramps starts rubbing his chin a little bit, leaving both throne rooms in silence before he lowers his arm to his throne and says, "Very well, and I, of course, will be doing the same." "Of course," I respond with a nod, still feeling rather unused to speaking with Gramps in such a formal manner. Especially considering how doting he tends to be. I glance at Red, who has been silent this entire time, simply looking between Gramps and Leonidas, without saying a word. Meanwhile, the two of them are ignoring his existence entirely. And Satan still has his head lowered in a kneeling position. To start off, we should set a limit for the number of Class B demons that can pass through to Earth each year, I state, making Gramps' eyes narrow further. "I'd say about 3 nobles passing through a year would be fine, since we're already limited to only about 70 class verses ourselves, and you have more class verses than we have by over double currently on Earth." Gramps taps his throne's arm rest a few times before raising a brow and saying, 10 nobles a year. Remember that you have your knights on Earth as well as yourself." I hold back my wince as I retort, 7 nobles a year. You have Satan and Damien here, and I'm pretty sure you've sent over another 2 clan noble demons since those 2 came as well. He frowns, his gaze turning to the Red Knight finally while he says, 9 nobles a year. Your Red Knight has already killed one of those 2 clan nobles. Rest in peace, Aurora. Or not, I guess. She was kind of trying to capture me after all. Not to mention force me out of my hunting grounds. An unforgivable sin indeed. Tar snorts in my head, bringing Gramps' attention to me again as his eyes narrow a little and he looks around me. As if searching for something. He can hear Tar from all the way over there, across whatever skill or item we're using to talk to him. Wow. 8 nobles a year. The demons far outnumber the humans, and the humans are less structured as well. I state my final counteroffer, which I know is a little weak, but should still work, nonetheless. He raises a brow again, but smiles anyways and says, "Agreed." I let out a mental sigh of relief. Not an actual sigh, of course. Because that would be bad for negotiation. Even if he is my grandfather. "Now, my turn," Gramps says, making me stiffen up ever so slightly. "You have a clear winning condition attached to the bet for the humans, but how will we know if we win? There doesn't seem to be a time limit yet." Shit, he noticed. Then again, of course he would. He's over 2,000 years old and has probably been in negotiations longer than I've been alive. And that's just the time he spent in the negotiations themselves. He is a king after all. How about in 10 years' time, if you haven't forced us back to Demon Isle and the Arctic yet, then you will lose this bet and return to Tartarus where you will fulfill your duties as princess, Gramps says, making a chill run down my spine at the short deadline. Since I was hoping more along the lines of 3 decades to a century. There's no way we'd be able to do it within just 10 years. But how could I? My eyes widen as an idea comes to me. Counteroffer, I state while folding my arms under my chest, if we haven't forced you back to Demon Isle and the Arctic yet by the time the void forces arrive on Earth, we will lose the bet. Does that work? He blinks once, then smiles and nods. I relax ever so slightly at the outcome. Good. From what Amelia has hinted, the void forces shouldn't arrive on Earth first when they do reach our universe. They'll arrive on other planets and begin spreading across the universe before eventually making it here. Which should give us a lot of time to force the demons back. Then, after winning the bet, we can deal with peace with the demons and talking about joining together in the war effort against the void. It was nice talking to you again, little Scarlet, Arcas says with a warm smile on his face, and his son, Leonidas, says, stay safe on Earth, okay? Then, after getting a smile in response with his granddaughter raising one hand with her thumb sticking up, Arcas cuts the link with the magical item he had Leonidas make and send to Earth. Something that lets him contact those over there. The screen vanishes, turning back into blood again and leaving the throne room in complete silence. Her negotiating has improved, Arcas says while glancing at his son, finding him to have started walking over to the balcony already. So he gets up and follows after him. Once he makes it out there with him, Leonidas asks, you know what you just did? Arcas snorts as he leans against the balcony railing. Do I now? He asks with a smile on his face. Leonidas turns to look at his father with a conflicted look on his face as he says, you lost that negotiation on purpose. The Demon King just hums at that, turning to look up at the blood moon high in the sky. Silence fills the balcony, with the only noise being that of the fighting demons in the distance visible from the balcony. And if I did? Arcas says while leaning over on the balcony railing, with a faint smile on his face. Arcas sees his son staring at him for several seconds before Leonidas sighs and turns to look out at the battlefield while muttering, if you just let her win, then she may never come back here again. I doubt you'll have to worry about that, Arcas says while putting a hand on his son's head, to the boy's obvious displeasure. She'll come back. Even if she wins the bet, she'll come back. One day. She'll probably be coming sooner rather than later, considering how the void creatures are supposed to reach Tartarus before Earth. Arcas doesn't say that part out loud, keeping silent even though his son already knows this. You're right though, she has improved her negotiation skills, Leonidas says, bringing Arcas' gaze back to his son right when the boy pushes his hand away from his head. Leonidas then turns to look at Arcas, meeting his gaze as he asks, that you're doing? The Demon King smiles and turns back to look out over the battlefield again and answers, she probably picked it up when she was shadowing me for a week draining my life energy. His son snorts at that out of the corner of his eyes before leaning over the railing himself, placing his head on his arms as he seemingly sulks. Is he jealous? Probably. Scarlet. I let out a sigh of relief the moment the connection ends. That went well, I think. You realize he let you win that negotiation, right? Tar comments, and I nod my head with a frown. Yeah, but I kind of bet on that a little, just to help the humans a bit. After all, we need every advantage we can get to win this. I focus on Red to find him looking between me and the pool of blood that's still floating there with astonishment on his face. Like he didn't expect me to actually be able to get that bet confirmed with the Demon King. Well, I'll leave it to you to bring news of that bet to the people, I tell him with a smile, snapping him out of his shock. You, he mutters before suddenly grinning at me and appearing right next to me in a blur to slap my shoulder, sending me down to my knees in his enthusiasm. You maybe just saved the human race. And he doesn't stop with one slap, instead slapping my back in what I think is supposed to be a congratulatory or thankful pat but is instead rather painful. We should head out, but know you have my gratitude for giving my son a future, he says as he finally finishes slapping me, making me stand up straight again while reaching back to rub my shoulder and back. Meanwhile, out of the corner of my eye, I notice Satan giving Red a death glare. On that note, why don't you marry Dash? Not happening. Not on your life, filthy human. I blink in surprise, before focusing solely on Satan, who had just spoken at the same time as me. And Red does the same, looking at the Oni with disgust. Please tell me I'm not going to have to break these two up again? Looks like the Oni still hasn't learned his lesson yet, Red says, his voice coming out with a rather dark note in it. One that has a shiver running down my spine. You're going to have to break them up again, Tar says rather dryly, making me let out an internal groan. Are you really going to pick a fight with me right now, Red? Satan says, his voice taking on a gravelly tone as black flames begin building up around both him and Red. Meanwhile, a ball of black flame surrounds me, probably for protection. Are you kidding me? Please stop fighting, you two, I tell the two with a scowl on my face. Or at least wait till I'm back at the front lines. I want to go hunt. While Red looks hesitant, Satan immediately stops and bows towards me with a polite, "Yes, Your Highness." As you wish. And now Red just looks awkward instead. Red, please take me back to the front lines, I state while crossing my arms. And to my surprise, he actually does what he's told. How nice of him. Now if only he wouldn't go getting into fights with people who could kill him when he's one of the strongest fighters we have on humanity's side. Then things would be much nicer for us. Breaking news. A news reporter's voice echoes from the massive screen showing front and center on top of the massive building at the back center of the main square. The apex predator, princess of the demons and the daughter of the White Knight of Humanity Scarlet Art Esker de Arcaren has come to an agreement with the Demon King. If humanity is able to push the demons back to Demon Isle and keep the rest of the demons in the Arctic by the time the void creatures attack Earth, the Demon King will cease all hostilities and retreat back to Tartarus for good. And the demons have been limited in how many nobles they can bring to Earth each year, to just 8 nobles. Meanwhile, various other screens showing similar scenes repeatedly play throughout the city and all other cities of the Republic. She really did that? I guess she really is on our side. We have a princess. All hail the apex predator. She's done it. Now we just need to fight. All throughout the city, cries of joy can be heard from the people. Both those who know the apex predator on a personal level, and those who don't. Those who have fought against her, and those who have lost to her. And on top of the city hall of the capital city, the White Knight of Humanity can be seen with her legs dangling over the edge of the roof talking into a small, red rock. Looks like everything's worked out as planned, she says, more than a little relief in her voice. Then a male voice belonging to the Blood Calamity comes through the stone, that's good. Now she won't be ostracized by the humans. Amelia looks out over the celebrating city with a smile on her face without saying a word for several comfortable minutes. It's going to be tough on you these next few years, you know that, right? Leonidas asks, a hint of worry in his voice. His mate smiles even wider and asks in a slightly teasing tone of voice, "Oh, you worried about me?" "Of course I am," Leonidas bluntly answers, making the slightest hint of a blush appear on Amelia's face. But she just smiles even wider as she lies back down, facing up at the moon hanging high in the sky as she quietly says into the stone, "I'll be fine." Scarlet can finally live a happy life without having any secrets to hide. She won't have any burdens lying on her that someone might hate her if they knew about. She's free to do what she wants. And if she eventually chooses to not fight the void creatures? Leonidas asks out of mere curiosity. You know she won't choose that, Amelia said with a chuckle. It's just in her blood to fight. She glances at the stone. And I blame you for that, by the way. It's just as much your fault as it is mine, oh great White Knight of Humanity, Leonidas says with a snort before growing serious again, but seriously. What if she doesn't become strong enough to take on the voided overlord? Amelia sighs at that and stares up at the sky again as she answers, I'll support her in whatever decisions she makes. If she chooses to abandon humanity in the future to run away from the void creatures, I will stay with her the whole way. She smiles a sad smile. I will never abandon her again, no matter what. Her mate goes silent for a few seconds before saying, likewise, my dear heart. Never again. Both of them stay silent, simply listening to the seemingly endless cheers of the humans all around the capital, along with the news still playing out from the various news stations broadcasting on the sides of buildings. Meanwhile, various flying cars all fly past Amelia's spot on the roof, but none of them notice her, thanks to her sense nullification. Amelia knows that there will still be a rare minority that will still irrationally hate Scarlet. But that's for Amelia to handle, not a problem for Scarlet. The silence continues for several minutes. Is it really almost time though? Amelia eventually asks, a sad look on her face. It is, Leonidas answers immediately. According to the prophecy, the void spawn will be breaking through into the in-between any day now, and then they'll move on to the other side of the universe to begin their assault under the voided overlord's command. Amelia lets out a sigh at that and mutters, it's always something, but the void spawn won't make it here for another several decades, right? You already know this, Leonidas says quietly. She sighs again and nods her head, wishing that she didn't. I don't know why we call it a prophecy, Amelia mutters. It's not like it was told in some poetic gibberish or anything. Even if the prophecy was shown as a recorded vision, it's still a prophecy, Leonidas says, sounding like he doesn't believe what he's saying himself. The witches said so after all. Amelia snorts at that and glances at the stone as she comments, the witches that had a tenth of their number exterminated by a certain angry grandpa? Silence fills the roof for a few seconds before Leonidas says, they deserved that. It may also have been a bit more than a tenth. Leonidas's muttered voice comes through the stone, making Amelia break out into laughter before she wipes a tear. And after laughing for nearly an entire minute, she finally calms down and says, I don't think I've laughed that much since before Scarlet was born. Best get used to it, Leonidas says, a happy note to his voice. You'll be laughing a lot more from now on. I hope so, Amelia says, her voice sounding small as she looks up at the stars and the moon in the night sky. I hope so. The two fall into a happy silence once more, just letting the air between them be filled up with the cheers of the humans down below and the voices of the many news reporters echoing from the various large screens on the sides of the buildings. And after a while, Amelia's eyes begin to close and she falls asleep with a smile on her face despite the hatred being directed towards her by many of the humans on Earth right now. Sleep well, my heart, Leonidas's voice echoes around the roof. After we get back to the base again, I find everyone extremely excited to see me and full of praise. Or at least, almost everyone. There are still a few people who I hear talking about me behind my back, but even they aren't considering doing anything against me or anything like that. Just insulting me for being a demon. And for the first time since becoming a guardian, I actually answer the people's questions as everyone asks them. Strictly so that I can stay on their good side instead of pissing them off or something. Then I can go back to ignoring people tomorrow. Tar snorts and comments, a single day of being polite. How gracious of you. I know, right? Very gracious. He snorts again. After everyone finishes talking and lets me finally leave to go do my own thing nearly 2 hours later, I find myself in my room flopping onto my bed with a sigh and a groan mixed into one. Lots of emotion in that one, Tar comments, but without the sarcasm from before. Yeah, it was a lot to handle today. Even if I knew Gramps wasn't going to do anything that would harm me, and that he would likely help, that bet was the only thing I could see completely finishing the shift in public opinion towards me. Even if it didn't shift everyone's opinions, it did what it needed to. It shifted the majority, and that's all that was necessary. But if we didn't manage to get that agreement established, then I don't think the majority of the humans would have been so happy with me. Even if most of the hate was moved to Amelia, instead of me. I'm still part demon, and I'm still the granddaughter of the Demon King, the man who has been massacring the human race for centuries now. Since it isn't the favor of the majority though, even those who still think of me as a threat and are insulting me like those I hear doing just that right now, saying things like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and other such bullshit, won't say anything or make any complaints directly or publicly. Not when it would simply hurt their own image. And the only guardians who are strong enough that their image doesn't matter to them are also strong enough that they've reached the point most guardians begin to stop caring about the human race as a whole anyways. That they just care about their own leveling instead. Meanwhile, the illogically insane guardians never make it to class 4, so I won't have to worry about those crazies. Not that there are many of them in the world in the first place. Being a guardian is very stressful and dangerous, and often breeds some rather questionable individuals by the time they're powerful. But the ones who actually make it to power are all intelligent and sane enough to understand things that would get them killed from things that won't. And attacking me would just mean their death. Meanwhile, attacking me verbally would kill their own image. I wouldn't be surprised if some people try to attack me online anonymously though, but I feel like the government will handle that. Or Amelia will just erase the traces of it before I ever even so much as hear of it. I'm glad everything's turned out alright, Tar says as I roll over onto my back and he lies down onto my chest. Then I deactivate my armor, leaving me in a simple t-shirt and pants. Do you know what you're planning on doing here on out? Just gonna try to reach Class B as fast as I can. Which, unfortunately for those demons who were just cheering me on not too long ago, means massacring more of them when the war continues on the main battlefield. Brutal, Tar says rather plainly, but he doesn't seem to really care considering his tone. Yeah, well, their conflicting ties aside, I'm still with the humans, and they're with the demons. We're at war. They'll just have to suck it up and continue being killed by their own princess. Tar snorts, likely at the way I put that. Now, I would also like to get more SP so I can focus on getting gradual corruption nullification to as high a level as I can get it. Preferably at least level 30 by the time I reach Class B. So that it'll have the highest possible chance of being upgraded. About that, Tar suddenly says, making me raise my head, bringing my chin to my collarbone to look at him. The prophecy has information directly related to upgrading your skill. And I think now would be a good enough time for you to hear them now that you aren't preoccupied with anything urgent. I stare at him for several seconds, seemingly making him nervous before I tell him, well, go on. First, you can treat upgrading the skill in the same way as you would any other title-bearing mythic skill, because that's what the upgraded version will be, and it'll tell you when you meet a certain number of the requirements for upgrading the skill that you've met them, Tar says, making my eyebrows rise briefly in surprise. For those requirements though, one of them will easily be fulfilled as long as you just keep using the skill on a regular enough basis. And by that, I mean you get someone to poison you and you heal yourself over and over again. Tar, I slowly state out loud with a frown. That isn't something I'd call easily fulfilled, much less something I would accomplish from using it on a regular basis. I mean, you would be using it on a regular basis if you were being poisoned all the time, Tar comments, making me open my mouth to say something, only to close it again. Then he continues speaking after seeing my silence, anyways, you'll have to remove a curse placed on you by a Class B being, cure a poison given to you by a Class B being, and cure a disease given to you by a Class B being, each while still being at Class 4. And that's the main requirement for upgrading the skill. I stare at him for several seconds, before grabbing him by the scruff of his neck and throwing him across the room. Then I take off my shoes and climb under the covers to go to sleep. Since I'm just too mentally exhausted right now to hunt. The next morning, I wake up to my usual routing of getting out of bed, using the clean skill, then changing clothes and activating my armor before heading out of my room towards the cafeteria. And along the way, I ignore the many gazes locked on me as I walk. Most of which seem a little too passionate for my tastes. Like a lot of them are treating me as some hero. Then there's the rare gaze that is hostile instead. Which has me making a mental note of those people, just to be safe. I continue walking until I reach the cafeteria and immediately order food. Then I wait at a table in the corner of the cafeteria, simply being stared at by pretty much over half the cafeteria. Tar appears out of nowhere, apparently having woken up from his own nap where I left him on my bed to leave on my own, before he floats down and sits on my shoulder. Morning, he mutters, his voice echoing in my head. Morning. Several seconds pass in silence. Everyone's staring at you, he points out the obvious. I know. Silence befalls us once more. Eventually, I turn to look at a table several tables away when I hear the people at it getting up and beginning to walk my way, my eyes trailing them the entire way. And to my surprise, I actually recognize all of them from university. Necro. I believe that was his title. The guy with void spawn jeans, Tar adds, sounding interested now. The man is finally wearing some actual armor instead of what he was wearing before, which was just a regular t-shirt and shorts enchanted to be Magitech armor. But unlike before, his eyes now kind of remind me of a ghoul's, what with them being completely pitch black with no whites at all. No pupils either. Kinda creepy in a way. His armor is pitch black, which fits his death magic motif, and it's also a little similar to the Reaper's armor, but with some modern-day artificial fibers woven in instead of demon parts. On the other hand, his friends that are with him are all students I recognize the faces of from university, none of which I was particularly close to. Although I do see one of Belle's friends amongst them. I don't remember her name though. Half of them are wearing their armor right now while the other half isn't, probably because we're just in the cafeteria even if this is on the front lines. I wonder what Necro wants though. The cafeteria. Moments before Scarlet walked in. Anthony Wilson, otherwise known by the public as the Class 3 Guardian known as Necro, stares at his beer in front of him as his friends all talk amongst themselves. What do you think about the new terminal update that just came out? Angel asks with a smile on her face, the girl still looking just as young as she did when she first entered university with the appearance of a 15-year-old, despite her age being 20. I love it. Just being able to dash. The girl cuts off out of nowhere with her mouth held open in a mixture of happiness, awe, and surprise that has Anthony turning his head to find the Scarlet Wolf walking into the cafeteria. And Angel isn't the only one who goes quiet, as most of the cafeteria joins her in silence with everyone simply watching the girl move to order before sitting at a table in the corner. Anthony feels conflicted at the sight of the girl. Because while he once wanted to join a team with her just because of her power, he knows now that she is far out of his league. Not only in etched skills, of which she must have more than he can count from the Demon King, but also in her own level. And while he can't see her exact level, he knows that her mana level is far above his own. Even higher than a lot of the professors at the university already. At first, he was shocked when her identity as a part demon was revealed, much less her being the princess of the demons. But after talking with his fae, Artoria, and being reminded of the strangely demonic feeling she got from the girl every time she saw them, he realized the truth was right in front of their nose the entire time. Now, though, he wonders what it means for them as friends. Did she ever consider you a friend though? Artoria asks, sounding genuinely curious. Anthony chooses to ignore her. After watching the apex predator and everyone watching her for several seconds, Anthony glances at Angel, who still has stars in her eyes. Something that reminds him that the girl has always been a major Scarlet Wolf fan, which clearly hasn't changed after figuring out what the girl is. And after making eye contact with him, Angel quickly motions toward the apex predator with her head. Yeah, guess it couldn't hurt to say hi. Anthony looks at everyone else and nods before getting up from his seat and beginning to move in the apex predator's direction. And he doesn't miss how the girl's eyes immediately lock onto them the moment he stands up from his seat, making a chill run down his spine at the sight of her glowing red eyes meeting his pitch black ones. Eyes that he can feel real power behind. She's grown. A lot. He continues walking without breaking his stride towards her alongside his friends until he finally reaches her and looks her over, including her armor and everything else. Although his eyes stray to a few different areas, particularly her ears, powerful-looking armor, and the changes he finds in her body since the last he saw her. But he averts his eyes right away to be polite, finding her narrowing her eyes slightly on him as he waves and says, "Hey Askar, how are things?" "He totally just checked you out," Tar comments from his place on my shoulder, but I just let out a short huff of air at that, not wanting to respond. Instead, I nod my head towards Anthony and politely answer, "It's been okay." "You?" "Good here too," he answers before glancing at the seat next to me and asking, "Mind if I sit?" "Sure," I mutter as I begin to smell my food, bringing my gaze over towards the kitchen. And at the same time I hear them saying my name, mentioning where to bring it. I really wish I could reach Class V faster, because eating so much food is a hassle. It'll be so much easier when I become Class V and don't have to eat anymore. At least, not unless I need regenerating. Which I guess means I'll still have to eat a bit, but not anywhere near as much. At least, if I don't want to end up struggling to regenerate as quickly as I would have otherwise in the middle of a fight. Or grow anemic. Neither of which sound like very pleasant options. I glance back at the table when all of Necro's group begin taking their own seats around it. And the one person I recognize from their group aside from Necro is the girl I know who is friends with Belle. Although I still can't remember her name. Her stare is creeping me out though. Because it's very starry-eyed. To the point that I wouldn't be surprised if she asked for an autograph. I blink as I remember something just like that happening before. But where do I remember it from? Oh, right. This girl asked me for her autograph a while back. Maybe that means she won't ask. Now? The girl tries to talk to me only to fail rather miserably and end up a stuttering mess instead, so I just kinda ignore her to focus on my food that is currently arriving. Food that ends up taking nearly half the table to hold, making the others appear more than a little awkward. They're the ones who moved over here though, so not my problem. I begin to dig into the food in silence for several minutes, trying to rush the process a little so I can go back to hunting. But then Necro finally speaks up, bringing my attention to him. Did you always have wolf ears? Or was it just after your reality warp like everyone thought? He asks with a genuinely curious look on his face. That has me pausing for a moment, and I can't help but notice the dozens of eyes on me as the majority of the cafeteria, all people who can easily hear a conversation from across the room thanks to their classes being at least two, listen in, clearly waiting for my answer. So I let out a sigh and put down the food I was about to eat before focusing on him and answering. I didn't awaken to my demon genes until after I contracted. Before then, I was just a regular human with dormant blood leaking genes. Whispered conversations immediately erupt from all around the room while Necro and the others at my table look surprised without saying anything. Did you hear that? She wasn't always a demon. No, she was. She just wasn't awake. Does that mean there could be other part demons living dormant amongst us? How did Dash? I decide to nip that in the bud right away by saying, it's not possible for another part demon child to be born. Not without a royal demon or the white knight of humanity there to put the demon genes into a dormant state so that they don't eat the human genes. And even then, if the child were to enter a fracture at all, they would die unless they contracted then and there. That shuts them all up right away. Only for Necro to bring my attention back to him as he asks, does that mean you were dying in your first fracture? A tense silence fills the cafeteria. One that makes me feel incredibly awkward, because I can tell most of them genuinely seem worried for some reason. Which is weird to know. Although the tiny minority of people against me here just seem curious. Yes, I was, I answer before picking up my food again, until I formed a contract which safely awakened me, using some of the reality energy to pacify my demon genes. I begin eating as they all go back to whispering amongst themselves. This feels strange. I'm not used to being so open about everything that's happened to me over the last year or so. Yeah, it feels weird to me too, just seeing it, Tar says while patting my neck once with his paw. But not bad? That has me smiling ever so slightly as I reach for another sandwich. Not bad. Then a flash goes off, making my head snap to the side to find someone having just taken a picture of me. But they just smile and wave before turning to their friends and whispering, I got a picture of her smiling. This might just be the first picture of the apex predator smiling in history. I grimace at that and turn back to my food again, deciding that I'm better off acting like that didn't just happen. Well, considering that he's happy about getting a picture of you smiling, it at least means he still cares about you and isn't disgusted by what you are, Tar comments, sounding more amused than he should be despite his words. Right? Yes, you're right. But you're still enjoying this too much right now. I have no idea what you're talking about, Tar says, his voice full of snark. I almost snort but stop myself after considering where I am. Yeah. Sure you don't. Can you tell me what it's like to be part demon? Necro asks, making the whispers clear up again. I glance at him, then at the rest of the people in this room. many of whom are actually recording this right now. This is just going to be like an interview, isn't it? After a few seconds of silence, I decide why the heck not. Guess I'm spending the next couple hours answering questions instead of hunting. A few hours later. So you're absolutely sure they won't send more than the agreed upon amount? That they will abide by the agreement? The General of Humanities Military, a Class B Guardian by the name of James McCall, whose title I don't remember, asks again. And just like the last 2 times, I answer with a blunt, yes, they will abide by the agreement. Stop asking already. The old-looking man who fits the description of a gruff-looking army general from the old world movies frowns at me and says, "Young lady, the entire war is depending on this agreement. I have to make sure there are no possible betrayals involved." I cross my arms as the various guardians in the room, both young looking to the point of them looking in their mid-teens, all the way to old with them looking in their natural 50s and 60s, class IVs, and class versus, and even a few non-guardians who were just very smart and managed to get promoted to strategic work without the use of skills, all bob their heads back and forth between me and the general. And I say that even if the demon forces are on average stupid and non-sapient, they will still listen to the Demon King and the nobles without question, I repeat, glaring at the general in the process. And the Demon King would never renege on an agreement struck. The general and I continue glaring at each other for who knows how long, the argument practically repeating itself over and over again until one of his aides, at least I'm guessing they're his aide, rushes inside the room, drawing everyone's attention to them in an instant before they exclaim, "Purple has made a statement." Silence fills the strategic meeting room of the main headquarters for the front lines as everyone stares at the aide, making them sweat rather noticeably. Both in looks and in the smell. "Tell us," the general says after glancing at me with a glare one last time and focusing on the aide. The aide doesn't waste any time as he says, "Purple has declared that we are to trust the agreement, and all of the knights agree with this decision." I immediately notice a shift in the general's posture. As if just the name Purple made a major difference. He lets out a sigh and glances at me once more, this time without as much heat, as he says, "Fine. We will do things your way." My mouth parts open in surprise, but he quickly turns to the other strategic officers and higher-ranking guardians to speak before I can get a word out. "From now on, the Apex Predator will be a part of our strategy council, whether she shows up to the meetings or not. Furthermore, I will be granting her the rank of a colonel during this war, so make sure you listen to her orders should you find yourself approached by her." He turns back to me and nods his head politely. "We will shift our war effort from holding them back to pushing them." I let out an inaudible sigh at that. Success. Finally. This old badger was way too much trouble to convince. No matter what, he was dead set on sticking to the safe manner of warring, where we basically were just sticking our feet in the ground in an attempt to not lose any more ground. Which would have been a smart move, if the demons were going to continue getting more and more reinforcements as they were doing. But now they're limited in their reinforcements. Or at least, they're Class B reinforcements. And Red killed off several of their nobles who showed themselves in the last battle, one of which being a blood lycan, which surprisingly doesn't bother me despite the supposed pride of our species that other blood lycans feel when other blood lycans are killed, so the war effort is moving along a bit safer now. I can't help but wonder if Satan and Red will be pitted against each other at some point in the future, though. Probably. The general turns to his aide and says, "Please send a letter to each of the top Guardians universities asking for assistance from the students. Tell them that they will all be thoroughly compensated and given captain ranks within the military and a full scholarship for their remaining years if they assist." Without any hesitation, the sweating aide nods his head, bows once to me for some odd reason, something I've seen quite a few people doing, not just him, and rushes out of the room. I roll my eyes at the jab, the old man being one of the most annoying people I've met in quite a while. A whole different type of annoying than those creepy kitsune who lack boundaries. Yeah, laugh it up," I tell him, before narrowing my eyes on the man. "That is, if you want me telling Gramps about a certain general who I would love him to meet." That shuts him up rather quickly as his eyes go wide with more than a little fear, the Demon King's name turning out to be a very nice scare tactic. "If he knew you were using his name to scare people," Tar mutters. He would be proud. Tar stares ahead from his place on the table for a few seconds before slowly nodding his head and saying, he probably would be. Yep. I can't help but notice some chuckles around the room as well, making me smile at them. Well, I'm gonna go start hunting, I tell the general, still smiling at the fear on his face, even if it is rapidly dissipating. Then I wave at the people in the strategic meeting room and add, ciao. Time to hunt some more. After leaving the headquarters, I immediately leap out over the walls, ignoring them in their entirety thanks to them being set to allow me through before I land with my fist striking the ground outside, sending a cloud of snow all around me. Then I rush through the snowy mountains, passing straight by quite a few guardians along the way, some of whom try to take pictures of me as I run. And after several seconds, I suddenly start grinning and activate my beast transformation skill, turning me into the other form that the skill unlocked this time. My quadrupedal beast form. The transformation takes a few seconds before I find myself shaking my wolf head slightly to reorient myself. Then I begin running across the snow on all 4 feet, my 3-meter-tall and 4-meter-long wolf body moving through the snow far faster than my bipedal form would have. And if any normal human were to see me right now, one that isn't at least a class 4 or V guardian, they would probably only see a blur of black and red passing by them as the wind from my movement blows the snow and trees I pass. So freeing. I like this form. You haven't really used it much, if really at all, since you got it though, Tar points out. True, but that's because I never really got much chance to. I only got it after reaching class 4, and I've spent most of my time since then fighting on the front lines of the war here on Earth. And unlike my bipedal form, this form doesn't let me just change out of it after changing into it. It takes at least 10 minutes of relaxing for the skill to stop running, since it doesn't let me use the skill again to cancel it like the bipedal form does. A rather annoying thing, but at least cheaper in terms of mana. I already know how to speak in this form too thanks to Leonidas, but before, back when I was hiding my identity, I couldn't just change into that form where I might be stuck in it and mistaken for a demon. Well, it wouldn't have been a mistake, Tar mutters, making me narrow my eyes slightly. You know what I mean. Anyways, now that I don't have to worry about anything like that, since my identity as a part demon is already known to everyone, I can go ahead and move around in this form all I want. It's actually stronger than my bipedal form, even if I'm still not entirely used to it yet. And from what I have heard, the legendary version of the skill has the beast form at 4 meters in height and almost 5 in length, and the mythical version, the version etched by Gramps, has it at 5 meters in height and almost 6 in length. A massive as hell wolf. Which makes sense, considering that the mythic version is called Beast of the Apocalypse. Gramps only showed me it once, and even then it was terrifying. Despite the fact that I knew he would never harm me. Just his paw was large enough to completely cover me. In fact, he could have just turned me into a pancake by stepping on me with that paw. I shiver at that thought as I continue running through the snow. That man really is terrifying. And a doting grandpa, Tar comments, sounding more than a little amused. Yes. And a doting grandpa. The front lines. Roxanne wipes the sweat from her brow after sending another barrage of ice spears straight at the demons down below in the valley. But no matter how many times she attacks, the demons never seem to lower in number. So many of them, is it even possible to win? Don't give up now, Roxy. Roxanne hears her brother, Christopher, call out to her from several meters away, bringing her attention to him where she finds the man raising both hands into the air while sending blades of water down at the demons. Things are finally looking up with Her Highness on our side. Roxanne rolls her eyes at his statement before turning her attention back to the demons with a frown. That princess happens to be the princess of the demons, not our princess, she corrects him, only for the man to chuckle. And it's not just him, as many other people around them respond in some way to her statement, confusing her. But before she can say anything, she hears her brother say, I mean, she's the daughter of the White Knight of Humanity, and the niece of the Blue Knight of Humanity. What more could make someone the princess of Earth? She's already the princess of the demons, so why not the princess of the humans too? I've heard she's already got a following of people calling her that. Yeah, some people at the HQ are bowing to her and treating her as royalty already. But I thought there was still a group who were afraid of and hated her. Most of those types were sent packing after seeing the recorded and live interview with the princess in the HQ cafeteria. Roxanne stares blankly at the various guardians around her who are having an idle conversation in the middle of a battlefield. Before she can yell at any of them though, a loud howl rings out through the night, stopping the chatter from the guardians and bringing their gazes to the trees behind them. And in the darkness of the trees, beyond the falling snow, they all see two glowing red eyes growing larger and larger until a massive wolf with black fur streaked with crimson bursts out with a murderous yet still elegant and noble look on its face. Roxanne immediately feels her knees growing weak at the sight of it. That is, until the idiots around her start cheering for the massive wolf. Princess Scarlet. The princess is on the battlefield. Go princess. That is Roxanne blinking before she realizes something and tries identifying the massive wolf, only to not get any result. No result means the wolf is at least part human. Meaning this is the apex predator. Roxanne feels the weakness in her knees going away as she watches the massive wolf ignore them all to jump straight down into the battlefield, making red clouds appear in the air before blood begins to rain down on the battlefield. Then another howl rings out through the night, for some reason making Roxanne feel invigorated. And full of pride. Pride for the princess of humanity. I quickly begin tearing apart the demons down in the battlefield, not wasting a single second as I have every last one of my skills going full blast. And right away, hundreds of demons begin to die a second, most of whom are class 2s and 3s. But despite being the same class as me, some of them are class IVs, proving just how powerful my quadrupedal beast form is. And all throughout this, I continue spreading my plagues throughout the entire demon army, through both blood plague and blood rain. Plagues that begin to net me some credit for almost every single demon death in the battlefield, even if it's only a bare minimum amount of credit. My rampage continues on for who knows how long, and at multiple points I begin to lose myself in the slaughter. But every single time it happens, Tar manages to quickly shake me out of it. At which point I just continue my hunt, making absolutely sure that I don't kill any humans on accident. Because that would reverse all of the goodwill I've garnered from the humans over the past day. From time to time I get system messages mentioning me killing 10,000 demons, but I ignore them to continue my hunt. Just like I'm ignoring all the thousands of attacks I'm receiving, most of which are healing in an instant. What I don't ignore though, is when I feel my regeneration increase in speed, meaning blood regeneration just leveled up. Not that I'm going to check my system messages to make sure. I don't have the time for that. The slaughter continues for who knows how long, the vast majority of the demons I've been killing being non-sapient ones, but every time I do find sapient demons they try to take me on with looks of awe in their eyes. And even as they're dying by my own claws, the awe never fades. Which I guess I should take as a compliment? My thoughts slow to a halt when I finally focus on my hearing and the words being chanted from the human mages on the cliffs bombarding the demons. Princess of Humanity! Princess of Humanity! Princess of Humanity! I stop moving through the many demons around me with a random demon hound half crushed beneath one of my paws as I stare up at the humans with a look of bewilderment on my face. Okay, I know I was garnering goodwill from them, and that a few humans started calling me that on the internet and even in the base, but seriously? You do remember the prophecy Purple told while you were on Tartarus, right? Tar suddenly says from the in-between. The princess of both worlds. Right. I guess this was kind of prophesized to happen. I think this was a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, Tar comments as I resume my hunt, feeling very happy about being able to actually hunt freely in my beast form and use my blood Lycan skills out in the open. After all, Purple indirectly called you the princess of humanity, so it only makes sense that it would catch on to the people. Yeah, looks like it. After several more minutes of hunting go by, I jump straight up to the cliff, before looking back down at the battlefield. At the carnage I have wrought in my wake. The entire battlefield at this point is covered in blood, and I can smell the scent of my plagues all over it, with clear signs of it being all across the battlefield. And the Class 1 demons out there can't even handle my plagues themselves and are keeling over dead without even being attacked. Meanwhile, the Class 2s are almost reaching that point as well, leaving only the Class 3s and above able to fight still. Meanwhile, the humans are only picking up the pace, which is actually making the demons begin moving backwards, letting the humans gain ground for the first time since the start of the war. And I'm still only a Class 4. Makes me wonder just how much damage I can do at Class V. Considering how most people your level only have a few legendary skills at most and you have 10 legendary skills and a title-bearing mythic, I'm pretty sure you might be the only person who could possibly stand up to a noble while still at level 1000, Tar says, sounding completely honest and flabbergasted because of it. Oh, right. Apex Predator is more than just a title. Tar says, sounding shocked, only to blow out a breath and mutter, never mind. So I forgot it had a skill attached to it. I was a little busy dealing with the fallout of the universal notification to think about it much. Now that I am though, it certainly explains why I'm able to tear through everything down there like paper. Even the demons at higher levels than me out of the Class IVs. Which are netting me quite a lot of EXP, if I had to guess without opening my system messages. Not enough to bring me to Class V within the next week though, simply because there aren't enough Class IVs here to do that, and the Class 3s and below aren't giving me any EXP outside of the tenths of a level that I'm getting from slaughtering enough of them. If someone else heard you thinking that, I'm pretty sure they'd pop a blood vessel, Tar mutters, but I just shrug his comment off. Their loss. Anyways, where can I find some better prey? From what I can tell, this battlefield only has about a third to half of the demons' Class IVs in it. And the nobles are finally starting to eye me up as if they were just waiting for me to get back out there and continue hunting them on the battlefield. So in that case, I grin. How about I go back to hunting battalions instead? They won't be expecting that. Lucius, otherwise known as the Reaper, sits in silence with a book open in one hand as one of the many dukes in the room, he forgets their name, speaks of the most recent war update from Earth to the royal court. As you all are well aware, we have been pushed back over 24 kilometers during the past month thanks to the princess's interference in the war. During this time, we have lost over 10 million Class 1 through 3 demons to her plagues, and the rest of the humans taking advantage of Her Highness's kindness. However, we have also managed to send another 15 million Class 1 through 3 demons through the several hundred gates that have opened up all throughout the continent we have claimed. The Reaper glances at the Demon King, who he finds sitting on the throne with an indifferent look in his eyes. The same look that he's had since he made his agreement with the princess. His motivation for seeing this war through seems to have decreased. While Her Highness has caused a vast number of casualties amongst our numbers, she isn't the only one. Some Duchess Lucius can't remember the name of and doesn't feel like bothering to identify them to find out, says from the other end of the long table from him. Amongst the humans, all of the class versus are taking down just as many of our number, even with our own nobles keeping them in line. Lucius's eyes narrow slightly when she glances towards the Lord of Hellfire and adds, but their knights are dealing too big a blow to our nobles every time we send them out. At this rate, we won't be able to keep up on the high-level playing field for long. Your Majesty, might I make a request? Another duke asks, bringing the Reaper's gaze towards the king, who is finally narrowing his eyes, showing more attention to the matters at hand. You may, Duke Varner, the Demon King states, his voice echoing coldly through the throne room. I would like to request we send one of the demon lords through the demon gate once it charges up enough energy in 5 years' time, Duke Varner suggests, piquing Lucius's interest just a little bit. And it's not just him, as the man's suggestion raises whispers from all around the throne room. But each of the whispers cut off the instant the Demon King taps a single extended claw against his throne, filling the room with nothing but silence. Lucius watches his old friend for a few seconds, finding the man seemingly seriously considering the man's request. It would take at least 5 years of not using the Class V gate in Demon at all to build up enough energy for it. The man would never have considered that if it weren't for the deal, but now that he can't send as many nobles anyways, and we have the other gates all over the continent opened for the lower class demons to pass through. Very well, the Demon King declares, his eyes narrowing on Lucius and the other 3 demon lords sitting at opposite edges of the long table set place at the center of the throne room and stretching across the hall with ease. Then, after a few seconds of consideration, the Demon King finally turns his gaze towards Lucius, making him stiffen up ever so slightly before he states, "Lucius Tor de Blackheart, I am hereby ordering you to travel to Earth the moment the gate gathers enough reality energy to make it possible. Will you obey?" Lucius meets his liege's eyes directly for several seconds, his own pitch-black orb staring into the glowing red abyss that is His Majesty's gaze, before he eventually comes to a decision and closes his book with a snap that echoes throughout the throne room. Then he slowly stands up from his seat, his gaze remaining locked on the king's the entire time until he finally says, "I will, Your Majesty." Whispers run throughout the throne room until Lucius runs his eyes over the dukes and duchesses, making each of them shiver in fear from the hunger ever present in his gaze. But after making eye contact with the last duke, he turns his gaze back to the Demon King. "Your goal when you arrive on Earth will be to eliminate 3 out of 5 of the Knights of Humanity," the Demon King says, surprising many in the room judging by the looks on their faces. Something Lucius guesses to be due to his targeting only 3 of the knights and not all 5. "You are to kill the black, purple, and red Knights of Humanity, and capture the white and blue knight alive." His eyes narrow slightly as his blood domain begins spreading through the throne room. "No permanent incurable harm is to come to the white Knight of Humanity, but you can do as you please with the blue knight as long as he is alive when he arrives." The princess's uncle and her mother. Understandable. Before the Reaper can respond, he turns to look at the Devourer, who had stirred slightly from her nap at the mention of the Blue Knight of Humanity. Right. If I'm not mistaken, the Lady of Devouring was the one responsible for devouring that knight's emotions. Lucius's eyes narrow for a second before he focuses on the Demon King again and says, "Very well, Your Majesty. Your will be done." I do wonder though, will Her Highness return to Tartarus to find her mother and uncle living well and with her uncle's emotions back? Or will the Blue Knight fall prey to the Devourer's mob once more? The Reaper ponders over this for little more than a brief second before looking around the room once more and then reopening his book in a lethargic motion, denying his hunger throughout the process. Then he begins reading once more, ignoring the rest of the court session. I wipe the sweat from my brow as I walk through the streets of the city that was made into a temporary base out on the front lines after we recovered it from the demons and freed the humans in it. Then I blink, realizing that I have clean and instead use that. "You must be tired if you're forgetting clean," Tar points out, and I just nod my head in response. "Well, I've been trying to get to Class B as quickly as I possibly can over the past month, even if that's only left me at level 850. Much lower than I was hoping for. I mean, it makes sense considering that most of the demons you're killing aren't even Class 4, and the ones that are? They're only levels 501 through 700 for the most part," Tar says, making me numbly nod my head again. At this point, the only reason I'm still gaining EXP is because of the whole 10th of a level thing that I get after killing a certain number of beings. And inching up to 1,000 through that alone isn't helping me much. I tried taking on a noble over the past month, but lost spectacularly despite Apex Predator and all of my other skills. So I won't be trying that again until I'm at the cusp of breaking through to tier 5 myself. "Alan gave you a real scolding for that one," Tar says with a chuckle. "Amelia as well. And pretty much everyone else you know." Yeah, everyone was mad. But I had to try it. And I'll be trying it again when I reach level 1000. Yeah, I think you should be able to handle a noble at that level as long as the noble is only level 1001, Tar says after a short pause to think about it. I glance at my shoulder with surprise visible on my tired face as I walk. "You actually approve?" "Yes, I do," he says with an amused snort at my surprise. "Nice." Anyways, I walk into the base located near the wall of the city, only to pause in place when I hear a familiar voice from within the building now that I'm actually paying attention. One belonging to Emily. Then I hear Michael and Michelle's voices next after hers. They're finally here? Belle made it to Class 3 very quickly thanks to her unique mental barrier magic, since it's a known fact that mental magic users often level faster purely due to them having one of the easiest magics to attack and involve themselves in combat out of all known magics. Since they're directly attacking or blocking mentally from a distance without even having to get up close and personal. So from what I've heard, Belle snuck her way to the front lines while still at Class 2 and participated in the war by using her mental barriers on everyone, giving her a little bit of the EXP of everyone they killed. A rather sneaky way to get EXP, but it worked in the end for her. And she survived, albeit with an earful from her father. So that's all that matters in the end to me. Like you're one to talk about recklessly endangering yourself for levels, Tar grumbles, but I, of course, ignore him. I close my eyes for a second and focus my senses on the building itself, before narrowing in on where I hear their voices coming from. Then I open my eyes again after finding the group to all still be at Class 2, but they're at least in their low 200s, so there's that. It's the beginning of November right now, so it's been a little over a year since we all contracted. Close to a year and 3 or 4 months. Although closer to a year and 2 months for me. Also, why does it feel like it's always snowing wherever I go? I don't mind the snow myself, in fact I like it, but it always seems to be snowing. Does it really matter? Tar asks, and I shrug the shoulder he's on, making his claws dig into my armor to stay in place. Not really. As I walk, I glance at my status to find all of the improvements I've made over the past month of demon slaughter. Name, Scarlet Art Esker de Arcaren. Species, human/blood Lycan hybrid. Magic, blood. Titles: The Apex Predator. Age, 20. Level, 850. SP, 4. Stats: Physical, 2547. Mental, 2547. Magical, 2546. Physical/level, 2. Mental/level, 1. Magical/level, 2. Free points, 0. Mana, 300, 133,11,996,624.7. Free points/level, 5. Active skills: Pain Diffusion. Skill level, 26. Description: Null Magic Field. Skill level, 24. Description: Blood of Ruin. Skill level, 20. Description: Blood Nullification. Skill level, 15. Description: Rain of Blood. Skill level, 13. Description: Metallicized Blood. Skill level, 21. Description: Blood Empowerment. Skill level, 18. Description: Blood Swarm. Skill level, 12. Description: Beast Transformation. Skill level, Static. Description: Metallicized Blood Claws. Skill level, 29. Description: Life Absorption. Skill level, 30. Description: Partial Shift. Skill level, Static. Description: Blood Pull. Skill level, 22. Description: Blood Chains. Skill level, 20. Description: Blood Diffusion. Skill level, 18. Description: Gradual Corruption Nullification. Skill level, 20. Description: Blood Plague. Skill level, 15. Description: Crimson Overdrive. Skill level, 20. Description: Blood Shadow. Skill level, 15. Description: Blood Retribution. Skill level, 15. Description: Blood Armor. Skill level, 10. Description: Blood Manifestation. Skill level, 10. Description: Blood sacrifice. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood boil. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood bank. Skill level, 10. Description. Passive skills. Blood regeneration. Skill level, 26. Description. Blood aura. Skill level, static. Description. Blood absorption. Skill level, static. Description. Sanguine effect. Skill level, static. Description. Life sense. Skill level, 20. Description. Apex predator. Skill level, static. Description. Bloodthirst. Skill level, 15. Description. Bloody thorns. Skill level, 15. Description. Everything is really shaping up to look quite nice. Although I'm still annoyed that I haven't gotten another inherent skill for who knows how long. Just when am I going to get my next inherent skill? The last time I got one was over 100 levels ago, and the last time before that 250 levels before it. You'll probably get one at level 1000, Tar says, giving me an answer I really didn't want to hear. Hey, it's either get really good and powerful legendary inherent skills once every blue moon, or get a bunch of low-rarity run-of-the-mill skills every couple dozen levels. I'd rather have the legendary ones. I mean, you have a point. But still. It's annoying. My thoughts come to a halt when I enter the hallway that Emily and them are walking down, making me smile at the sight of their faces. Faces that look pleasantly surprised to see me. Now this is a reunion that's been long in the making. Scarlet. Emily practically screams as she bursts into a sprint straight towards me. And I just roll my eyes before deciding to let her glomp me. Mostly because I haven't been able to go to the university where they've been since I got back to Earth. So I haven't seen them since the Class B fracture. She tackles me with her hug, and I just stand still to let her squeeze me rather tightly. Then a second person joins in the hug, making Emily grunt when she is tackled this time from behind by Denise. I roll my eyes again, but still don't move. At this point, I can tolerate some physical contact. To the point that it doesn't absolutely disgust me anymore. Now it's just a bit of discomfort. Nothing more. A very nice improvement from not even a year ago. After 10 seconds of it though, I push them both off of me. Because boundaries. The three of them all look surprised still, despite me pushing Emily and Denise away, with Michael even asking, "You are Scarlet, right?" And for the third time, I roll my eyes as I say, "Ha, ha, very funny." Then I look at Emily and pat her on the head once to her delight. It's nice seeing you all again. For some reason, that shocks them just as much as my allowing their physical contact. Meanwhile, I just hear Tar laughing his ass off in the in-between. You should stop that before I find another window to throw you out of. He, of course, does not stop. Instead, the furball just laughs even louder. I huff out a breath of air at that before beginning to walk past the trio as I call out, "I'm gonna go get some food. Wanna join me?" The three quickly catch up with Emily smiling so brightly that it has me looking away just out of the pure innocence on her face. You do remember that she uses corruption magic, right? Tar points out the obvious point that I am ignoring and will continue to ignore, because she is innocent. He snorts, showing just how he thinks about that. Anyways, looking at Denise and Michael, the two are still getting along great, their relationship going strong. Or at least, their holding hands as we walk seems to imply that it is. We've talked a couple times over calls since I made it back, but never seen each other in person. So we've already dealt with the whole them finding out about my identity thing, and none of them particularly cared. Emily still seems to think of me as if I were her big sister, Michael just doesn't care, and Denise doesn't really care about that sort of thing, only about what's in front of her. Why do I feel like every time I worry about having to talk to someone about something important, they always end up blowing it? My thoughts cut off when I hear someone running down the hall we're about to cross. So I tense up slightly as I walk, only to relax and smirk slightly when I eventually recognize the sound of a certain butler shouting for a certain young girl to slow down. Then I continue walking for a few seconds before immediately rushing forwards and catching the girl who crosses the crossroads in the hallway the moment she enters our hallway, lifting her up as she giggles into the air. "Scarlet!" Arya exclaims while wrapping her arms around me tightly. I chuckle as I lower her back down, only for her to not let go. So instead, I just carry her in my right arm instead. "How are you doin', Arya?" I ask her with a bright smile on my face. One that quite literally stuns a few of the passing guardians into simply staring. And instead of glaring at them, I just turn towards Arya's butler as Arya pulls back a little, making me move my other hand around her to keep her balanced while she says, "I'm doing great. I finally get to see you again." The butler, who is only now making it to us and is catching his breath, smiles and tries to speak between his breaths, only to fail. "I'm happy to see you too, little pup," I tell Arya while nodding my head at the old butler and then looking at her face, only to push a lock of hair behind her ear, making the girl giggle. Then I glance back at Michael, Emily, and Denise to once again find them acting flabbergasted along with the other spectators we have in the hallway. So I wave my left hand at the spectators, some of whom are starting to take pictures, and tell them, "This isn't a show. Please move along." Fortunately, they all do as I ask, leaving Denise and Michael to continue in their shocked silence. Emily, on the other hand, frowns and looks the other way, making me frown too. She can't be. Looks like it. I'm not comfortable enough to do anything this touchy with Emily though, and she's not my family even if she's a friend. So while I feel sorry for her, I'm not gonna treat her like Arya. Anyways, I turn back to Arya's butler when I hear his breathing return to normal, the old man finally straightening again and saying, "It's nice to see you again, young Mississippi." "You too, Roger," I say with a smile while patting Arya's head as the girl leans up against me, putting her head in the crook of my shoulder and neck. "Have things been going well for you?" He nods his head with a smile and says, "They have, young Mississippi." But then he grows serious, making my smile turn into a frown. "Young miss, I have a request from Master Knight asking for you to visit the Night House soon." I stiffen up slightly. "What? Isaac Knight wants to see me?" I ask with a frown. One that only grows deeper when the butler nods his head politely and says, "That is correct, young Mississippi." I don't know how to feel about that. Isaac Knight is a rather famous person in the world. He's the oldest living human being, despite not being a guardian himself. And there are also rumors of him being able to fight with demons bare-handed even as a non-contracted human. Overall, there's a lot of mysteries around the internet about the guy. And rumors galore, many of which not a lot of people actually believe. That he's quite a bit stronger than a normal human, despite not being contracted. That he looks like he's in his prime even though he has supposedly been using a guardian's skill to keep himself alive all these years. Something that shouldn't continue working like that and keep their youthful appearance. And to top it off, he's the richest man in the world, the father of both the Blue Knight of Humanity and the White Knight of Humanity, and kind of a sociopath. "And they call your father's side of the family full of demons," Tar mutters, almost making me snort. But I hold back for the sakes of everyone here not giving me weird looks. Also, I can tell just what Arya thinks of this request to see me solely by the fact that she tensed up the moment she heard it. From what I've heard before, Arya doesn't dislike or like our biological grandfather. But that's because the man is like a slab of ice. He only thinks logically and doesn't really grow attached to others. Not even his own family. All he does for his family is the bare minimum of what's expected of him by society. He doesn't hate them though. I'm not sure if he can even feel hate, at least from what I've heard both from Amelia and the internet. And Amelia doesn't seem to like talking about him. She did kinda disown herself from her father and brother, which is why she has a different last name as them. "Do you know why he wants to see me?" I ask, my frown lightening up slightly when Arya nuzzles her face into my neck for some reason. "That I do not, young miss," the butler says with an apologetic bow of his head. "But he said that he would also like to meet with young Miss Amelia as well." He raises his head before looking off to the side and asking, "Would that be all right with you, young Miss Amelia?" My eyes widen as I turn to look where he just spoke, only to find Amelia appearing out of nowhere with a frown on her face. Holy donuts, in a video game, how did he? I see your senses are still just as sharp as always, Bloodhound, Amelia says, making my eyes widen even more. It's a pleasure to see you again, young miss, the butler, whose title is apparently Bloodhound, a title I recognize from the news and online, says with a short bow. Meanwhile, Amelia just rolls her eyes and says rather drily, "Why do you insist on refusing to hunt demons? You're going to die of old age at this rate if you keep it up." Wait, so that's why he looks old? He's just not killing any demons? Who's Bloodhound? Tar asks, sounding curious as I feel him moving atop my head. Likely tilting his head or something. Bloodhound is known as the best guardian ever to exist in terms of his senses, and is a Class B guardian whose level should be in the 13 or 1400s. Which would explain how he was able to detect Amelia. I've heard his physical capabilities are at tier E though. The worst tier possible for a capability. And without the life force of another being to keep him youthful and power his reality, he is probably just as strong as a regular old man right now. Just one with incredible senses. The man has been a guardian almost as long as Amelia herself and was the oldest person in existence to become a guardian, the man becoming one when he was in his 60s. Something that both is and was entirely unheard of. After the Knights became fully settled into society as the Knights of Humanity though, he stopped fighting demons and just vanished from the face of the public. And since he always wore a mask, no one knew what he really looked like. You don't need to worry about that, young Miss Amelia. I won't let myself go to my final resting place until I am certain young Miss Aria can make it by on her own, the butler says as me and Tar talk. Wait, he wore a mask? Tar asks, sounding surprised. Yeah, apparently that was common in the initial days of the system and demons first coming to Earth. Also, I'm still surprised by just how dedicated he is to Arya. I glance at Arya to find her actually having fallen asleep in my arms at some point, making me smile a little. Then I look up to find Amelia looking at me with a smile of her own, only for her to turn back to the butler and say, "Whether we go visit the bastard will be entirely up to Scarlet." "Very well, young miss," the butler says, making me almost want to tell him to just use our names since there are 3 young misses at this point. Everyone, including the 3 spectators that are my friends, stare at me, simply awaiting my response. And after a few seconds, I come to a decision. I've met Gramps, so why not meet my grandfather on the other side of my family? I'll meet him, I answer. After eating dinner with everyone, Amelia, Arya, the butler and I all begin making our way to the Knight's personal city. An entire Tier 1 city belonging solely to their family. And we use some random spatial magic items to get there apparently, making it take mere moments for us to arrive on the other side of the planet. Once we arrive, I can't help but look around with surprise. Since while I have heard that the city is just as big if not even bigger than the capital, I didn't realize just how big it was. Even if I've seen pictures of it, the city is just too massive for words. All of the buildings around us are upwards of 100 floors, with several towers occasionally planted through the city spanning upwards of a couple hundred floors. At least, if my hearing is right. It's hard to tell with the massive number of people that are in this city. We all immediately get into an air limo where we're driven straight to the very center of the city. A building that stands out from everything rather blatantly simply due to the massive courtyard and the miniature forest that surrounds it. Not to mention the private barrier, and the many other barriers throughout the mansion grounds. There is an entire garden at the back of the mansion as well, along with a beautiful water fountain with various statues of different mythological animals spewing out water into it and some smaller water fountains just like it scattered elsewhere in the courtyard. Our limo slowly lowers to the ground until we're right outside of the main gate before the gate opens to let us in, probably due to the many security measures all throughout the mansion grounds. Which is likely why we didn't just teleport in as well. The limo continues to drive until we stop right around the fountain in front of the large double doors of the manor. A manor that is absolutely massive in size. Although still not as big as the castles on Tartarus. but those were castles, so. Can't compare a mansion to a castle, Tar says, agreeing with me. Your human grandfather seems to be far more influential than I thought he'd be. Yeah, he is known as the richest person on the planet after all. I'm pretty sure the guy also invested in the original creator of Magi Tech, Alan's father. So he has the latest in all Magi technology as well. Rich and influential with powerful children, Tar mutters, following which the doors on the car all open automatically and we all begin to spill out of the vehicle. Then the car starts driving away as the butler begins walking towards the double doors. Doors that open before he reaches them, revealing a few maids and butlers who all bow down and say, "Good evening, young missus. Please enjoy your stay at the Knight's Manor." I blink in surprise, before nodding at them and saying, "Thank you." The maids and butlers all smile at me for a second, then return to their polite and professional looks a second later. One of the maids steps forwards and bows slightly to the butler as she says, "Sir Bloodhound, the master is in his study right now, and is willing to meet his guests." Willing to meet wow. That's the guy invites us over here and then says that he's willing to meet us when we get here. I understand that things happen, and he might be busy for random reasons that might pop up, but saying it like that makes it sound kind of degrading. Almost like he summoned us, and just expected us to arrive. I don't like him, Tar says, returning to the in-between. Well, I can't jump to conclusions just yet. After all, I know how being so busy all the time can affect your view of other people sometimes. And more importantly, your manners. Not to mention that Gramps is also very arrogant and I'm pretty sure I can easily see him saying that to others himself. In fact, he most of the time does. He's the Demon King, Tar blandly points out as we walk through the front doors into a massive entry hall. The Demon King is a king. He's supposed to do that. It's his authority and how he's depicted. If he didn't act that way, he'd be looked down upon. Not to mention that he has the authority and physical power to back any of his arrogance, while this grandfather of yours might have only have the authority and not the physical or magical power. Assuming he really is just a non-contracted human. True. I haven't gotten to the most important point yet though, Tar says, sounding genuinely annoyed with this new grandfather of mine. The Demon King would have never treated you that way. In fact, he'd probably rip out your grandfather's tongue if he so much as spoke a rude word to you. That almost has me pausing mid-step, but I continue walking regardless. Yeah, you do kind of have a point there. Gramps seems to care about me more than almost anything. Probably because of the daughter he and his wife were going to have before she died. I blink at that thought before a question comes to mind. Do any of the demon lords have children? Yes, Tar answers, surprising me a little. Your father does. Can I slap you? I would prefer you didn't, Tar answers with more than a little sass. You know what I meant. Do any of the demon lords aside from Leonidas have kids? Yes, Tar answers again, once again surprising me. The Lord of Hellfire, Borgrim, has a son. Oh, right. I remember Satan mentioning that Borgrim was his father now. We continue walking through the manor as Tar explains, neither the Reaper nor the Devourer had any desire for kids. The Reaper because he was too worried he would end up losing control and devouring them, a common problem amongst ghoul would-be parents to worry about, and the Devourer because she didn't want to give up her sleep time. That last part has me stumbling, but I catch myself quickly enough. Then Aria's butler and all of the other maids and butlers stop in front of a grand set of double doors where the Bloodhound says, "The master is in here." Well, time to meet my other grandfather. Let's hope this doesn't turn into a shit show. My first instinct upon the doors to the study opening is to gape. But I hold myself back. Mostly because of the middle-aged man sitting in the middle of the massive room with a book held open in one hand as he sits on a couch. The study itself is massive, spanning the size of an entire library for some reason. And everywhere I look, all I can see are books, bookshelves, some comfortable areas to sit, and a single desk at the very far back of the study. How is this a study? It's a freaking library. But putting that aside, Tar? Are you seeing this too? Yes, I am, Tar mutters, sounding stupefied himself. Is this my grandfather? I thought my grandfather wasn't a guardian? You're right, Tar says, sounding like he's having difficulty believing his own words. That man is not a guardian. He is not contracted with anyone and is not initialized into the system. Then why the hell does he have mana? Mana on the level of a Class 3 guardian at that? Tar doesn't say anything as I walk into the study alongside Amelia and Arya, the butlers and maids all staying outside and closing the door behind us. And almost immediately, the hall fills with nothing but silence. The man doesn't even look at us. He just continues reading his book. I glance at Amelia to find her scowling at him before she says, "We're not going to wait for you to finish your chapter. Either speak now, or we're leaving." Are you kidding me? I turn a frown towards the man. Was he seriously just sitting there finishing whatever chapter he was on as we stood here waiting for him? I mean, I understand not wanting to be interrupted in the middle of something, but he's the one who asked us to come, and he's the one who was apparently ready to see us according to his maids. There is something seriously wrong with this guy. And that's not considering the fact that he's a non-guardian with mana. Amelia Knight, do not interrupt me, he says without looking up from his book, making me frown at the usage of his own last name on her despite it not legally being hers. Old man, you know my name isn't Amelia Knight, she says, the anger on her face growing fiercer. But the man just ignores her to continue reading for several more seconds until I'm assuming he finishes whatever chapter he was on and places a bookmark in the book before closing it. Then he turns to finally look at us, making me notice a strange light shining in the middle of his pupil. A tiny little pinprick of a white and golden light. The man has black irises around his pupil, with short black hair and a tall build. One that I'm guessing didn't get passed on to Amelia, considering that me and Amelia are the same height and we're not as tall as him by a long shot. He is wearing a fancy suit absolutely brimming with mana, showcasing just how powerful whatever magi tech he's wearing is. And it's not just the armor. It's everything on him. Literally everything he has on his person is magi tech. High-class magi tech for that matter. But despite that, none of it looks overly gaudy or anything. His gaze turns to me after passing over Amelia and Arya without much interest before his eyes narrow ever so slightly and he turns to Amelia again to say, "So this is the child?" And without letting her say anything, he turns back to me and says, "She has potential." Amelia's eyes widen in shock at his words, as if what we just heard was a once-in-a-lifetime thing or something. And she's not the only one, as Arya looks shocked as well. Okay, what's going on with this guy? If I had to guess, he is someone who has ascended without the help of the system guiding him, Tar answers, shocking me again. I had considered that a possibility after seeing his mana, but he's clearly Class 3 by his mana level. How could someone reach Class 3 without the assistance of the system? I don't know, Tar answers rather bluntly. Amelia quickly glances at me before looking at Isaac Knight, not calling him grandfather again as he says, "Bring her back here when she reaches Class 6. Everyone, including myself, stares at him in shock, letting absolute silence fill the entire study. He looks between us and sighs. And without a hint of hesitation, he turns back to his book and says, "Leave." That was all I wished to speak about. The door to the study opens once more, making me turn around to find the maid standing at the entrance without the butlers this time. "Just as usual, you may stay in the mansion so long as you pay for rent," Isaac says. And when I turn around to face him again, he's not even bothering to look at us while clearly having begun reading again. "Do whatever you please, but stay out of my study unless invited. That is the only rule." Amelia quite literally growls at him before turning around and walking out of the room, and Arya does the same thing, just without the growling part. She even takes my hand and pulls me with her, only to cling on to me after the door to the study shuts behind us. "Please make use of us as you please, young missus," the maids all say with a collective bow. Then one of them, an older-looking lady, walks up to the front and says, "If you wish to stay here, then we will bring you to your rooms and instruct you on how much the rent costs." I blink at that before immediately answering, "No thanks, I'll be heading back to the front lines." The woman blinks in surprise, before nodding her head and answering, "Very well, young Mississippi. You will be provided with a Magitech teleport item to bring you back to the front lines when you leave." I nod my head in appreciation as I try to parse everything that just happened. Isaac Knight reached Class 3 without the system, he's an asshole, and he wants me to come back after I reach Class 6. Very little of that makes any sense. Except him being an asshole. That I expected. Everyone walks in silence until we reach the main entryway, and Arya quickly gives me one last hug before going upstairs, likely heading to her room. Which kind of reminds me that she still lives with the asshole. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I know she barely interacts with him during her stay, and that I'm fighting on the front lines of the war, I would just take her in myself and let her live with me. But I'm always on the front lines. So there's no way I could take care of her. In the end, I just let out a sigh as I watch her leave with one last wave goodbye. Then Amelia and I both walk outside. And as we walk, Amelia randomly begins talking. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions about Isaac." She even calls him by his first name instead of father. "I do," I answer with a nod. Amelia sighs and, without looking at me, says, "Isaac Knight is the only human on Earth to have ever reached Class 3 on his own without help from the system. There have been a few others who have reached Class 1 and 2 without the help of the system, but he's the only one to ever reach Class 3. And with his magic." Amelia glances at me, not stopping in her walk as she lowers her voice and finishes, "He would beat you in a battle of only magic, with no use of physical attacks." I blink at that. The hell? I mutter, unsure how to take that. At Class 3? Even with my mythic and legendary skills? Amelia nods her head before facing where we're walking again and saying, "Yes. Even with them. Since he doesn't have the system's restrictions, he can do whatever he wants and knows how to do with his magic, without the limits of skills locking him down." She pauses for a second as we enter the forest around the manor, using the road passing through it. "And Isaac spent far more of his time studying his own magic rather than fighting demons over the past few centuries, longer than he spent seeing his own children. In fact, he acted like we were nothing like air when he and Mother had us." Oh. So his understanding of his magic surpasses his class by a long shot. And he really doesn't care about family, does he? Also, did she just say a few centuries? I blink at that before asking, "How old is Isaac?" Amelia glances at me with a sad smile on her face and answers, "He is 316 years old." 316. Does that mean he reached Class 1 before the system even came to Earth? I exclaim, my eyes widening in shock. The White Knight of Humanity just grimly nods her head. "That's," Tar mutters, sounding like he doesn't know what to say. And I don't blame him. Although this would certainly explain why he's so rich and influential, despite not being a guardian. Now I can understand some of his arrogance in there. He probably views everyone else as using training wheels to pass him by in level, while he puts in the effort to improve and learn his magic. Wait, his magic? What's his magic? I ask, focusing on Amelia, only to find her frown to grow at my question. She mutters, pausing slightly, "He has eclipse magic." My eyes widen in surprise at that. Eclipse magic. It's similar to Denise's inferno magic in that it's basically two elements in one. But instead of her ice and fire elements in inferno magic, eclipse magic is destruction and creation. And for him to have magic over those two elements completely under his control without the system's restrictions. It's just terrifying, Tar mutters, making me nod my head. Creation magic generally involves creating things, although not all that much is known about its limits. And destruction magic is the complete opposite. The two are both some of the most powerful magics known to humans. And giving both to a single person and letting them control it themselves, he really is a monster. Even if I could crack his skull with a single punch. Although, come to think of it, his study now makes sense. And I'm pretty sure the book he was reading was over something the old world called yin and yang. Which had something to do with light and dark. I think. Didn't pay much attention to the titles on the books aside from that one though. Honestly, I'm kinda glad I didn't tell him to shove it like I would have normally done. I was too shocked by everything that had happened to muster up a response before Arya pulled me out of the room, letting the doors close behind us. The thought of fighting someone with complete control over their magic, it just sends a shiver down my spine and reminds me of the time Gramps decided to show off in front of me. By taking me to the battlefield of blood and ruin during my weak life, draining him so that he could snap his finger once and literally rip all of the blood out of a million demons without a hint of hesitation and in a single instant. Then he put it back before they could even die, somehow keeping them alive through it all. Something that I still can't figure out to this day. Although Isaac obviously won't be able to do something anywhere near that level at just Class 3. But if he continues to ascend, he could actually rival the Demon King in a millennia. He doesn't seem to be all that interested in fighting the demons though, Tar points out, making me nod my head. Yeah. So I doubt he'll reach it even within a few millennia, much less one. I've never heard of him going to the front lines before, much less going into a fracture. Makes me wonder where he is getting the life force used to bring him to his current level from. Amelia and I continue walking until we leave through the gate of the mansion grounds, then we continue walking a bit more after that as Amelia answers some more of my questions. Specifically the one about me reaching Class 6. Isaac has always been very tight-lipped about where he learned to ascend without the help of the system, so I don't know much, Amelia says. But I do remember hearing him mention at one point that the system only supports up to Class V. She glances at me. So if I had to guess, you'll probably be expelled from the system if you reach Class 6. I blink at that. Would that mean I'd have to learn how to do all of my current skills without the skills' help? I ask, not very much liking that idea even if it does mean more power in the distant future. Amelia purses her lips at that, but instead of her, Tar appears and answers, yes and no. Both me and Amelia turn to look at him. Passive skills aren't just skills that activate with the system. They're ingrained into your very DNA and cells. Meaning you can't lose them even if you lost system support. But active skills? You might lose control over those. Not as bad as I expected then, but still not something to look forward to. Although, Tar adds, if you manage to get a skill like the Demon King's Blood Domain, which you should be able to get achievement locked, then you can start learning how to do everything yourself long before you ever even get close to reaching Class 6. Oh. Right. I kind of forgot about that. And then there's that redacted rarity skill too, Tar adds, making me nod my head in agreement. Tar's suspicion on that skill is that it's an improved version of Gramps' Blood Domain skill. Probably one that gives me absolute control over blood, including the nullification of any blood in the domain, not just the blood I manifest in it. Which would basically just make me like a goddess of blood or something. Then again, it could turn out to be something entirely different as well. I glance at Amelia to find her frowning slightly, with a tiny hint of jealousy on her face. Something I saw when I first mentioned the redacted rarity skill to her. She clearly wants a redacted rarity skill of her own. Why did he say I have potential though? How could he know that? I ask out of curiosity, making Amelia frown again before she faces where we're walking a long road heading towards the end of a large street. That is one of the things I don't know, Amelia says, not happily. All I know is that he's never said that your uncle or I had potential. You're the only one he's ever recognized in that sense. I blink in surprise at that before facing forwards again. Is that so? I mutter, only to suddenly halt when a large orb of water flies through the air before stopping above the road in front of us. And Amelia stops as well with a frown. The orb vanishes a second later to reveal the Blue Knight of Humanity in all of his psychopathic glory as he stares at the two of us with that emotionless gaze of his. And to my surprise, I find myself immediately asking, would you mind telling me who it was that ate your emotions? Scarlet? Tar practically shouts in my head while Amelia turns a shocked gaze to me. Meanwhile, the Blue Knight just regards me with his typical emotionless stare, seemingly uncaring of my words. But, to the surprise of everyone here, including myself, Blue actually answers. And his answer is not to my liking. The devourer. He states, not moving an inch as he does so to indicate his feelings. I stiffen up at that answer. It was Savandra? She did it to him? That was unexpected. The one I needed to talk to was right under my nose the entire time. Although this kinda takes killing her off the table. I just hope she'll be willing to return his emotions to him. Actually, on that note. Do you want your emotions back? I ask Blue while tilting my head slightly, making Amelia stiffen up immediately. And at the same time, Blue shows the first reaction I've ever seen out of him in the form of a simple blink of both of his eyes at once. One of surprise. It takes several seconds before he narrows his eyes slightly and says, I don't care. Then he walks past me and Amelia without another word. But for some reason, his words seem to shock Amelia even more as she quickly rushes up to me and grabs me by the shoulders as she practically shouts, Are you really able to get his emotions back? I open my mouth to respond, only to close it again a second later when nothing comes out due to my own surprise at her actions. Then I open it again when she lets go to answer, I don't know. I'll have to ask her if she'll return his emotions. Amelia opens her mouth for a second, only to close it and nod her head. There's a chance she'll say yes, and a chance she'll say no, I continue with a shrug. Savandra seems to care about me, so she might at least consider it. Although I would have to ask Gramps if he could wake her up to see me. Or if I could just tag along during a strategy meeting where I'll find her without having to wake her up. The thought of waking up the devourer isn't a pleasant thought. It's why Blue had his emotions eaten in the first place after all. Because he woke her up. Amelia blinks at me in surprise and tilts her head, strategy meetings? Yeah, I offhandedly mutter while still thinking about how I might bring this up to Gramps. Or rather, when I might. Since I won't be seeing him for a while. Gramps has had me sit in on quite a few of their war meetings. It was rather boring. Amelia just stares at me for some reason dumbfounded, but I ignore her as I continue to ponder over the subject of Gramps. How should I ask? Maybe I can ask to visit in a month or two. Oh. Wait. I can ask after reaching Class B. That should work. I focus on Amelia again, finding her still looking dumbfounded. So I ask, what's wrong? Did something happen? After giving Amelia a rundown of my time life draining the Demon King, a very eventful time, of course, the two of us go our separate ways, with me using my teleport magi tech item right away and her just walking into the city. To my surprise, the piece of magi tech isn't instantaneous, so I'm kinda left sitting here as some magic circle-looking thingies appear at my feet and start spinning around. I look around while I wait. My time in the strategy meetings didn't amount to all that much. Mostly just the way the demons assemble their armies, which was mostly already common knowledge to the humans, along with a couple of their future plans and some plans that had already been put into place before I got back to Earth. Probably on purpose. When I mentioned the planned attack on the Tier 1 city of Draco though, Amelia kinda freaked out. Which I'm still a little confused about, since I highly doubt Gramps would still attack them after he gave me that intel. But I guess it doesn't hurt to prepare. The attack wasn't set for another 3 weeks anyways. My thoughts come to a halt when the spell circle beneath me suddenly flashes with a purple line running across it, making me frown. Since I don't think it's supposed to do that. Then a bright white and purple light shines all around me and I end up finding myself in the middle of some sort of clearing in who knows where, with trees all around the clearing and sunlight shining down on us. And by us I mean me and the dozen or so guardians surrounding me. I blink in surprise before tilting my head slightly at the sight of the people, all of whom are level 900 or above judging by their mana levels. So, I don't really think I need you to tell me what's going on, but I'll ask anyways. I start talking, my voice filling the silence of the clearing as the many people all begin to tense up slightly. But why exactly am I here? And why did you interrupt my teleport? To kill you, one of them answers, to my significant surprise. You actually answered? I mutter, not having expected an answer. Then I shrug and ask, well, in that case, would you mind telling me how you ended up finding out about my teleport in the first place? It's not like I advertised where I was going. The man who had answered me the first time, someone wearing a black cloak with a black cowl over it, hiding their identity, steps forwards while summoning some sort of spear made out of water as he says, "We have eyes on you wherever you go." That has me pursing my lips and grimacing before I point out, "So you're stalkers?" They all seem to pause in whatever movements they were doing for a brief second, only to tense up again and attack, not responding to my accusation. "They're definitely stalkers," Tar says, and I have to agree. I activate all of my skills at once while focusing my attention on the Guardian, who is a little over 100 mana levels above me, which should hopefully give me the largest boost from Apex Predator. And as blood starts raining down all around us, as bubbles of blood pop on their skin, red and black lines run across their veins, and lines of life energy draw from each of the 12 Guardians to me, I transform into my beast form, letting out a loud roar after hurrying it up at the cost of more mana. All of them look surprised, reaching me just seconds after my transformation finishes, the lot apparently not having expected me to be able to transform that quickly. But I just grin, if I can call this a grin, considering my beast form's head and burst from my spot, sending the grass beneath me flying into the faces of some of the Guardians as I rush the highest level amongst the group. The man in question quickly backs up while throwing several blades of water at me, only to show surprise when I suddenly change my direction to jump out of the encirclement and rush at the bushes nearby, where I chomp down on the bushes edging the clearing. And at the same time, I hear a scream start and cut off just seconds before I spit back out the upper body of the man I had just bit the shoulders and above off of. A very disgusting act that I wish to never repeat. Didn't know this before, didn't ever want to know this, and never want to experience it again, but human flesh is absolutely disgusting. Even if I wasn't part human and had absolutely no interest in something like that. Anyways, the Guardian I just killed aside, I walk over and crush the video recorder he was using to record all of this before turning back around and coldly stating, "Now that the onlooker is out of the way, how about I deal with you stalkers?" What I find is all of the stalkers in question looking rather shaken up about just how badly their plan is going. Which I find kinda stupid, because just what were they expecting when they attacked me? Although the system messages that pass by after killing the human do give me a little pause. Level 901 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. 10 skill points are awarded for killing your first human. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a human. Huh. I kinda forgot that I got EXP for killing humans, unlike other humans. Not that it matters though. I have no interest in going around killing humans for EXP. Putting those messages aside for the moment, the other stalkers quickly regather their courage and begin to go on the offensive again, slinging skills of various types at me all at once. Guess it's time to teach these stalkers a lesson. Maybe dealing with these idiots will also nip problems like this in the bud for the future. Oliver Stone has never regretted anything in his entire life or his career as the Leviathan more than his decision to attack the apex predator. How did they underestimate the filthy half-breed so much? Wasn't she supposed to have only just reached class 4 a little over a month ago? Oliver struggles to fight the blood-leaking princess, but all he ends up managing to do in the end is sit by after being launched across the clearing into a tree where he lands with half of the bones in his body shattered, leaving him to watch the rest of his team get slaughtered. She's a monster. Just how? How is someone that powerful? He watches on in fear while trying to use his enhanced regeneration skill to speed up his natural healing, but by the time he hears the cracking sounds indicating his bones realigning themselves, the girl has already finished tearing apart his team. And she's heading towards him. As she walks, Oliver finds her transforming back into her human form, her armor magically transforming along with her in a much smoother manner than any man-made Magitech armor should ever be able to do. Which proves the rumor on the internet about her armor being made by a blood-leakin and not a human. Oliver feels fear freezing every single muscle in his body as his bones continue to heal. But even after they've healed enough for him to run, he just sits there frozen, watching as the girl over 8 decades his junior casually walks up to him while using the clean skill to clean herself of his team's blood. "So, stalker," she starts, once more calling him a stalker. "I think this is sufficient enough to prove to your employer that I'm not to be messed with by now. Don't you?" Oliver instinctively nods his head frantically in fear, but the girl just continues walking up to him before stopping and kneeling down, sitting on her heels with her head tilted slightly. And Oliver's fear rises even more as her glowing red eyes lock with his, seemingly staring straight into his soul despite the nonchalant look the girl has on her face. "Well, that's good then," she eventually says, flashing him a rare smile that catches him off guard with her beauty. But then she transforms a single arm into the arm of a beast and begins flexing her claws slightly as she continues, "I know your boss will be seeing all of this through a temporal manipulation skill to look into the past, so I won't be needing any prisoners." Oliver blinks once, only to find himself unable to blink ever again, his last sight being that of her clawed hand reaching for his head. Scarlet. After crushing the guy's skull, which is easier than I expected, I stand up straight again and stretch my arm a bit. "Well, what did you expect? The guy was over 100 levels above you and seemed to be a regeneration-focused guardian on top of that," Tar says, sounding slightly exasperated. "Of course you'd crush him with physical prowess alone when your stats are doubled against him thanks to Apex Predator, not to mention the other boosts from Bloodthirst and his own debuffs from your other skills." You have a point. I don't think anything in Class 4 stands a chance against me now. Although I still don't stand a chance against a level 1001. But I am hoping to be able to fight one when I get higher in level again. Preferably close to the end of Class 4. Tar snorts at that before muttering, "I can honestly see that happening." I smirk, only to look around and find my smirk vanishing rather quickly. "Okay, so I have no idea where I am right now." "Check your terminal?" Tar asks, and I do just that. But I soon find my signal blocked. Most likely by some sort of magical barrier the stalkers set up. So after setting the corpses on fire with a lighter I had in my armor's spatial pockets, I take a quick run out of the area for several seconds before trying again. And this time it does connect. Nice. I quickly maneuver to the tracking app on my terminal, only to frown. Not so nice. If they were gonna teleport me, couldn't they have sent me somewhere close to the front lines? It's gonna take too long to get there now. The stalker idiots, my new name for them just because of this annoyance that they caused, sent me all the way to the opposite side of the world from the front lines. The northern part of the western continent. I can't even just run to the front lines. Not unless I want to try swimming across an entire ocean. Why couldn't they just make my life easier? I mean, they were kind of trying to kill you, Tar mutters, but I only shrug at that comment. Well, stalkers and murderers or not, they could have at least made my trip back to the front lines easier. The device I used to teleport was a one-way thing and couldn't be used more than once. A disposable Magi-Tech item that probably cost them millions of credits to make. Maybe even 100 or more million credits. All wasted because some idiot decided to try killing me with some half-assed job. Although, I did at least get some EXP out of it. My eyes widen slightly as a grin stretches across my face. "Hey Tar?" "No," he answers right away, not even letting me ask my question. "Oh, come on. You haven't even heard my idea yet." "I don't want to hear it," he says from wherever he is in the in-between. How rude. I'm sure that luring in more idiots like these would give me more EXP than hunting demons on the front lines would, so why shouldn't I? "Just no," Tar says, sounding both exasperated and like he wants to be anywhere but here. "Even if you tried that, they'd have to be stupid to send anyone below Class V after you. And I'm pretty sure there aren't any Class versus willing to attack you even if they were against your existence. Not with the war going on, and not with your mother. And especially not when it'd be easy enough to track them down, considering the limited number of Class versus in the world. I mean, yes, but it would make for good EXP, right? And it'd clean up these stalkers too." He stops responding, so I just kick a random stone, sending it flying straight through several trees by accident, before I start walking. Well, you're probably right about the whole, no one's gonna likely go after me again after this thing. Doesn't mean I can't hope. Anyways, time to start walking towards the capital. This might take a while. As I run straight across the continent in my bipedal beast form, having shifted into it at one point along the way, I can't help but wonder just how stupid the person who sent those attackers after me must have been. I mean, I know that I'm still just a little over level 850 actually. What level am I? I let my system messages flow. Level 901 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 902 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 909 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 952 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 971 contracted human defeated. A massive EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 100 levels above your level. Level 931 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 925 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 931 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 940 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 912 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 914 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. Level 913 contracted human defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 50 levels above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a human, x12. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 851. 5 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 870. 5 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. Oh, nice. Those stalkers actually helped me out in speeding up my leveling. We're not luring more out to kill them, Tar says, sounding like he's putting his foot down. I doubt there are any more of them anyways. Their leader is going to most likely see what happened through time magic and back off after that point. Unless they have a class B they can send my way, but I doubt that for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. And they don't have any evidence they can manipulate to make it look like I killed them unprovoked, because it's impossible to record or edit a vision of the past. It just doesn't show up on recordings. They obviously can't put it in an artificial reality either, because that would just get them arrested for trying to slander me, since anything in an artificial reality can be mimicked and created. It's called artificial for a reason. I let out a sigh as I run. Well, won't really matter anyways. I'll be mentioning this to Amelia, assuming she hasn't already heard about it. And after that, there won't be anyone left to attack you from that group, Tar mutters, making me nod mid-run. Yep. I continue running for a couple hours, occasionally passing by cities faster than the people on the walls can blink until I eventually make it to the capital. Then I jump straight up to the Guardian entrance on the wall, a special place where Guardians can skip any lines to enter a city. And all of the people there look surprised by my appearance, with some seemingly preparing to fight, only to blink and start smiling or even cheering when they see me transforming back to my Lycanth form. But I just ignore everyone, including the few people who are actually kneeling or bowing to me and calling me princess as I walk through the line, waving my GID over the terminal in the process to prove my identity. Not that that's really all that needed, all things considered. After some more annoyance caused by the people at the gate, I make it into the city and immediately jump up to a roof where I begin jumping across more roofs until I eventually arrive at the Silver Association's base. Then I just walk right up and open the door. It's rather impressive to know that you just ran all the way across a continent in just a few hours and are already back at the base, Tar mutters, reminding me that his previous partner never actually reached my current level of power. I think he didn't. And he wasn't a physical-focused guardian either. He focused on magic. Ah, so even if he was at my level, his physical capabilities would still be far lower than mine. Gotcha. I stretch a little from my long run as I walk through the halls of the base, occasionally nodding my head at people I pass by. And when I reach Alan's office, I knock on it, finding the thing opening soon after to reveal Alan sitting behind his desk using his magic to open the door without even lifting his head to look at me. "What's up, Scarlet?" he asks, still not raising his head and instead frowning at the documents. Out of curiosity, I walk over to his desk and sit down on the end of it while peeking over to see what it's about as I answer, "Oh, nothing much. Just had a teleportation interrupted by some stalkers, dealt with them, and came here to ask for transportation back to the front lines." The documents he's looking over look to be about the supplies to the front lines. Something about them becoming a little thin recently. So I ask, "What's that?" But he doesn't seem to care about the documents anymore as he raises his head and blinks at me before eventually asking, "Did you say stalkers?" "Never mind that," I tell him with a wave before pointing at the document. "What's going on?" He blinks again, the man seemingly tired from stress and probably overwork. Then he narrows his eyes slightly and answers, "It looks like we have some changelings going after our supplies." He lowers his head to focus on the documents again. The things keep managing to sneak their way into the supply management even after we've tried exterminating them with magical sense guardians. But there are several of them that seem to be immune to their senses, just like the ones in the government were. So they're stumped on how to deal with them. Changelings, interesting. Well, if it won't take long, I can always head over there and sniff them out for you, I tell him with a light shrug of one of my shoulders. Wouldn't likely take long, and I'd get some free EXP from killing them. His head snaps upwards, before he slaps himself in the forehead and mutters, "I forgot you could sniff them out." Pretty important thing to remember, I comment with a raised brow and an amused smirk. "Yeah," he mutters, only to lower his gaze back onto me with his eyes narrowed again as he asks, "What was this about stalkers again?" Damn. Thought I distracted him. He clearly won't be mad at me, but I still don't want to be in here when he hears about them and gets angry at them. Especially when the problem is probably gonna be gone within a day or two anyways. Good luck with him, Tar says before abandoning me to the far shore. Traitor. To my surprise, Alan stays completely silent throughout my entire explanation of what had happened. And all he ends up saying is, "Okay." But I don't complain. A few seconds pass in silence, making me feel slightly awkward as he just stares at me. But then he turns his gaze to the side at the same time as me as we both see a flash of white light shining from a couple meters away. Then Amelia appears with a frown on her face. "Oh. Is it safe to assume that you'll deal with it, Lady White?" Alan asks with a frown on his face. And Amelia just nods her head and vanishes again. "So when exactly did you call Amelia?" I can't help but ask. He directly meets my gaze and answers rather plainly, "The moment you said the word stalkers." That answer has me pausing for a second before I try to remember our conversation as a whole. Then I realize that stalkers was one of the first things I said when arriving. Meaning he called her almost immediately after we began talking. I doubt I have to ask, but what exactly is she doing? I ask, getting up from the corner of the desk and moving over to one of the sofas. Alan looks back down at his paperwork again as he answers, "She's going to Sage to find the people involved before she deals with them in her own way." What's her own way? I ask before tilting my head slightly towards him while lounging back on the sofa. Erase everyone involved? He looks up again and says, "Yes. She will find the first one located by Sage or whoever else she might have searching before digging into their memories and finding all of the others involved as well." Yep. Just as I thought. Well, putting that aside for the moment, I comment, deciding to leave the massacre of assassins and probably some mercenaries as well to Amelia, about those changelings? Alan pulls up his terminal and begins typing away in it as he says, "Give me a second." Then after a few minutes of him typing, he puts it back down again and says, "A teleporter is on their way here. They'll send you to the supply storage for the war, located in the capital." "Alright," I respond with a nod of my head. "That's good. We can't have changelings going around messing with our supplies after all. That would severely damage the war effort." I blink at that thought. Probably severely damage the war effort. Okay, yeah, it would damage the war effort, but not too badly. Not unless they get their hands on the potions. Because the food and supplies aren't really as necessary for high-class guardians as they would be for regular people. But potions are very much necessary. Although I feel like it's a little ironic? Yeah, guess that word fits. It's a little ironic for me to say that when I've only ever used a potion twice in my entire life. And those times weren't even me using it. It was someone else forcing me to drink it. Then again, regeneration is my specialty. And Gramps is probably one of the best healers in existence. If not the best. Who else can bring people back from the dead, after all? I'm pretty sure there isn't anyone else that can do that. But then again, there aren't any healers at that high a level, so it makes sense that no one else could. I lean back in the sofa as we both wait for the teleporter to arrive. And after several minutes pass, making me wonder just how long the teleporter is gonna take, Alan suddenly speaks up, "So, Scarlet. What's up?" I ask, rotating my head slightly to look at him while still lounging on the sofa. But for some reason I find the guy looking slightly nervous and hesitant. "Have you seen the latest gossip online?" he eventually asks, making me frown. "What gossip?" I ask before adding, "I've been avoiding looking at the internet." And now he looks awkward on top of his nerves and hesitation. Just what is he trying to bring up? Is the gossip about my species? Gramps? Leonidas? Amelia? "Well, some people are beginning to wonder if you and Blaze are in a relationship," he mutters, making my eyes narrow as I realize that he seems to be looking for confirmation on that fact himself. "Seriously?" I mutter with more than a little exasperation. Why the hell would I enter a relationship with anyone? There's no point, I don't have the time, and I don't have the interest either. I snort at him and return my attention to the ceiling. I'm not sure why so many people are so attached to the idea of relationships. I've always had trouble developing attachments with others, much less caring for those attachments. And a relationship would only distract me even if I could develop the attachment into anything even vaguely resembling one. It would be a waste of time that could be spent doing something productive. Like leveling up and training my skills. Or fighting in the war. Which is basically the same thing, but still. Although I do feel a little bad for Blake. Just a little. My eyes narrow as a thought comes to mind. I haven't played Hunter 11 in a long time, wonder if I should get back on that again soon? Been spending almost all of my time fighting on the front lines recently and haven't been able to spare the time to play games. But there's still the war, should I really take a break to play video games while the war is raging on? I'm pretty sure the people would want you to take a break by now, Tar mutters, apparently having returned at some point. Did you know that some people online are calling you the workaholic wolf? Just because you never seem to take a break. I blink at that. Seriously? And since when did you get on the internet? He doesn't answer. Tar? He still doesn't say anything. You forgot to eat your tail, by the way. I got on the internet a couple times through your terminal while you were asleep, Tar mutters, making me raise a brow. But I don't say anything. Instead I wait. I was curious about what the people were saying about you, and also wanted to find which guardians my siblings might be contracted to. He gives in and explains. Did you figure it out? Yeah, he answers right away, but before he can say more, the door to the office opens and the man whom I'm guessing is the teleporter walks in. Let's leave that for later. Okay, Tar says, sounding relieved for some reason. You still need to eat your tail though. His presence vanishes from my mind. I just smirk at that. The teleporter, a short man with short purple hair that is letting off little blue sparks, quickly brings me over to the supply storage before leaving again through one of his portals without saying a single thing. Which I'm perfectly fine with. Although this smell. I frown. That's a lot, Tar mutters, and I can't help but nod my head in agreement as I watch the person who looks to be the person in charge here, assuming the badge on his shoulder labeling him as a general. Someone who is only under that gruff old man in terms of military authority. Before the man can even speak after opening his mouth, I shake my head and nod towards the spectators moving through the storage space around us. And he immediately nods back as he says, "Welcome, Princess Scarlet. Please follow me to my office. We have much to talk about." I nod without a word in response before we both make our way through the storage area without doing anything about the people watching us. About a third of whom are changelings. Fortunately, they all seem to be in awe right now, so they aren't doing anything. A rather nice perk of being royalty, Tar says with more than a little humor in his voice. We walk through what I quickly find to be a military base probably located somewhere inside of the city before eventually ending up inside of his office. And the moment we walk in, the door shuts behind us, and I find the room to have some pretty impressive soundproofing. To the point that I can only hear through it if I turn my hearing up to the max. Something I quickly regret doing when the general in front of me says, "We should be safe to speak in here," making me wince from the pain in my ears. I quickly push the pain aside to focus on him as I tell him rather bluntly, a third of the people here are changelings. His eyes widen in shock, only for him to grimace and sit down at the desk with a sigh. I expected as much, he mutters, sounding more than a little despondent. Poor guy. A few seconds pass in silence before he raises his head to look at me as he says, "There are probably a number of people out there who won't believe you. And there's the problem." I purse my lips as I try to think of a solution. Any chance we could just kill one and let the dead changeling turn back to its original form? I ask while tilting my head slightly. But the general just shakes his head and answers, "No. Changelings take at least half a day for their transformation to wear off after death. If that won't work." My eyes suddenly widen as an idea comes to me. "Did you think of something?" the general asks, seemingly perking up slightly. And I just nod my head before turning around to face the door with a grin. "This might be fun," I quietly mutter while reaching for the doorknob. The supply storage. The princess is here. She's really here. Svrel feels overwhelming excitement as he stares at the human general's office, with more than a little awe in his gaze. Which is why he notices the princess leaving his office the very moment she does so. And just the very aura of power the apex predator is giving off is enough to make Svrel endlessly proud to have her as his princess. Even if she is fighting on the wrong side of the war. But she'll return to her own side soon enough. As soon as the humans lose the war, she'll be back where she belongs. Svrel believes this with all of his heart. Then he feels his body tensing up slightly as Her Highness steps up to the center of the main area of the storage zone, following which the general steps up beside her and shouts, "Everyone! Assemble in the main storage hub." And Svrel knows without even hearing the echo that his voice is carrying throughout the entire base. The demon doesn't hesitate to move to join the assembling quadrant in the massive storage hub. Something that would have irked him a while back. Just the mere idea of obeying a human, even if it was to get into this location to be able to sabotage them. But now his princess is here. And he would gladly do anything for his princess. Silence fills the storage hub for several minutes as all of the workers around the base gather. Then after everyone is in their place in the quadrant, the general raises his voice once more, "We have a guest today. One who will be sharing a few words with a number of you here." He waves his hand to indicate the princess. "Welcome Her Highness, Princess Scarlet Art Esker de Arkaren. The princess of the humans and the demons." Applause immediately fills the storage hub, mostly from the changelings hiding amongst the humans. But then, without even waiting for the applause to die down, the apex predator activates her crest, making all of the changelings in the room flinch as they hold back the urge to immediately bow down to her, the holder of the royal crest. And while confusion is beginning to spread amongst the humans at the sight of the Demon King's royal family crest, the princess simply raises her voice and declares, "Every changeling in this room, I hereby order you to reveal yourself." Svrel's eyes widen in shock, but what he finds even more surprising is the feeling of his body beginning to go against himself as he lets go of his transformation in an instant without even realizing it until after the fact. I didn't know she was this close to getting the skill. Then everything goes dark amidst the shouting humans, the last thing Svrel sees being the princess appearing in front of him. Right after the first amongst the few changelings that transform back into their human forms leave their human skins, shocking the humans around us, I knock that changeling out and turn around while shouting, "Fire away!" And the many guardians that the general had prepared around us immediately attack the changelings I had previously pointed out, the majority of which are still in their human forms. Honestly, I wasn't expecting more than one to change forms at my order. Having 4 of them change forms was a rather large surprise. They also seemed to act differently from what I was expecting. Instead of devotion and awe when they transformed back, these changelings seemed to resist it at first and then let go of their transformation. Almost as if I had somehow forced them magically to do it. "Well, that would make sense," Tar comments, making me blink in surprise before I rush to kill the remaining changelings, most of whom are trying to escape. Why would it make sense? Well, the Demon King's ability that lets him order any demon to do his bidding is a skill called Demon King's Rule that gives him that title, and I would be shocked if he didn't etch it, Tar answers, almost making me pause mid-kill, only for me to continue killing off the changelings again. I didn't think about that. So what, does the etched skill give me a much weaker version of it? Probably, Tar says right as I finish off the last changeling, leaving the storage hub in silence. Again. It takes nearly an entire minute before one of the workers that had been pushed to the side of the room after being protected by a barrier speaks up, whispering, What the hell?" And his whispered words immediately shatters the silence, leaving everyone else to begin speaking as well until the general raises his voice, shouting, "Attention!" Then everyone goes dead silent again. A few seconds pass as I walk over through the changeling corpses till I reach the one I knocked unconscious. Then I grab it by the neck and begin dragging it with me to the general. Her Highness came here to sniff out any of the changelings we had suspected were infiltrating the base, the general begins, pausing only slightly when I toss the changeling up against the wall behind him before leaning against the wall myself with my arms crossed. "But we were worried that some of you might not believe her." He looks around at the dead changelings. "So here we are." Silence fills the storage hub again. And after it stretches on for too long, I begin to feel bored and grab the changeling again while saying, "If no one's gonna say anything, I'll just take my leave." No one says anything. So I just begin to walk down the hall, only to pause as I open my terminal and send a message to Alan for the teleporter to come back. And he does right away, startling me for a second before I pass through the portal into Alan's base again without another word to the general or anyone else here. "Was that the only base holding supplies?" I ask, and he shakes his head. "Then bring me to the next one. This might take a while." I glance at the changeling I'm dragging along with me. A changeling that the teleporter, whose name I still don't know, completely ignored as if it weren't even here. "I'm starting to pity that demon," Tar mutters, but I ignore him as I toss the changeling into the hallway and tell the teleporter, "Would you mind telling Alan to pick this guy up while I'm gone? He might make for good intel." The teleporter guy just nods his head and types something into his terminal. Then he opens another portal and we both walk through, leading to me ending up in another supply area. Albeit a smaller one this time. Probably because the first one was the supply hub in the capital, whereas this is not. Well, time to deal with a bunch of changelings. After several hours of clearing out supply hubs, I collapse onto my bed with a sigh of exhaustion. All of the supply hubs were just like the first one, just with a smaller number of changelings in them. And I deal with each in the same way. Unfortunately though, there were a couple hubs amongst them that had their military officer in charge replaced by a changeling. which made things messy. But since they were already suspected by the Guardians, they weren't the ones contacted to meet me and deal with the problem alongside me. It would have been nicer if I didn't have to repeat the process each time, but it wasn't like we could just let the people in the bases I cleared the changelings out of tell the other bases about what I'm doing. That would have warned the changelings too. It got you some EXP at least, Tar points out, making me nod my head in agreement. I'm still surprised there were so many adult changelings at Class 4. From what Earth used to know, there shouldn't have been any Class 4 changelings. Meaning the demons hid that very well. I wouldn't be surprised if Gramps actually fed the Knights false information about that before they came back to Earth. He probably did, Tar mutters while appearing as I roll over, letting him lie down on my chest. I wonder how Amelia feels about that. Probably not happy. Tar doesn't say anything, making me glance down to find that he's already fallen asleep. Is it just me, or was he more tired than I was? Tar obviously doesn't respond. I watch the tanuki for a few seconds before looking up at the ceiling again. Well, now that the changelings have been cleared up from the supply hubs, the supply problem should be gone. At least until they try to replace those changelings. Although there's always the chance that one of the changelings happened to be missing, but I smelled the entire city around each of the supply hubs for changelings and didn't find any more. And while that isn't exactly the most accurate as my senses get worse the further away the thing I'm smelling is, not to mention the other distractions amongst them, I can at least hope the problem is temporarily gone. It should at least be significantly reduced now. Which means it's time to go back to the front lines again. I can't help but feel like I'm forgetting something though. Note, if you are reading this on a website that is not Royal Road or on my Patreon, you are reading a pirated version and that website does not have the permission of the author to host the story. Please instead read the story on Royal Road, here, as it is completely free to read on Royal Road. Alan continues squinting at the changeling sitting with his arms, legs, and tail all bound on the sofa in his office. But neither he nor the changeling, who is now awake, say a word. Seconds tick by before the seconds turn to minutes, and then to hours. And at some point during it, Alan simply resumes his paperwork as he coordinates things for the war. All with the changeling still tied up in his office. Eventually though, Alan finishes his paperwork and leans back in his office chair with a sigh, only to remember the changeling's existence at the sight of it staring up at a sword on the wall. One of Alan's father's first creations. So Alan brings his arm up and opens his terminal before typing away in it and eventually calling Sage, at which point he asks, Sage, is Scarlet done dealing with the changeling's issue? The changeling in his office immediately turns to look at him, the creature's eyes widening at the mention of his princess's name. But Alan just ignores him as he listens to Sage's voice coming from the terminal. Yes, the young miss has finished clearing out all of the changelings from the supply hubs and is now on her way back to the front lines. Alan's eyebrow twitches with irritation before he says, understood, and hangs up the call. Then he begins glaring at the changeling. She dumped this changeling on me and forgot about him, didn't she? A snort echoes through Alan's mind coming from his fae, but Alan ignores them as he finally addresses the changeling, saying, how many changelings were infiltrating the supply hubs? Just as expected, the changeling simply ignores him. He even throws a disdainful look at Alan. Alan sighs once more while glancing around his office for a bottle of wine, only to remember that he decided to hold back on drinking. Because it was quickly becoming a bad habit. Not to mention that his wife could smell it on his breath and wasn't very pleased about it. Why do I feel like my workload always increases when Scarlet's around? Scarlet. I stand at the top of a mountain looking out over the main battlefield of the front lines with my hands on my hips and a wide smile on my face. Feeling proud of yourself, are we? Tar comments, sounding amused. But I just nod my head. I did manage to clear out a rather large amount of changelings today, and word has gotten out about it as well. So not only is public opinion about me rising, but some of it about Amelia is going up as well. Something about her raising me is benefiting humanity, fulfilling her role as the Knight of Humanity despite the actions it took to get here. Not very many people are saying this, mind you, but some are. And that's what matters. It really bothered you that she took the fall after all, didn't it? Tar mutters, making me purse my lips for a moment. I still don't think of her as my mother, nor do I care much about her beyond an associate. But I don't like the idea of someone taking blame and scorn for something like that. Whether I like it or not, her actions were logical. It was to abandon me when I was young to save me as an adult and free me from my curse of pride, or to let the universe die with me along with it as I continued to suffer through the curse. And while I still don't like the whole abandoning thing, it was, as I said, logical. In a way. Yeah, Tar mutters again, sounding like he understands my thinking. Probably. I continue looking out over the ongoing battle for several seconds before crossing my arms and tilting my head slightly as a thought comes to mind. Hey, Tar? I ask out loud, a faint grin replacing my smile. Seriously? He asks in return, likely already knowing what I have in mind. Seriously, I retort, my grin growing wider. He lets out a long and overly drawn-out sigh. Dramatic much? When it comes to you I have to be, he mutters, making me raise a brow. Well, if you're gonna be like that. I turn my head to look at the tanuki before quickly grabbing him with one hand and bringing him to my grinning face as I say out loud, so what about that tail? I think now's a good time to fulfill your promise, don't you? Panic instantly crosses the tanuki's face as he tries and fails to get out of my grip. And he continues struggling for several seconds before exclaiming, I give. I give. I'm sorry. My grin grows wider, and I let go of the tanuki, returning to crossing my arms again. Tar floats back to my shoulder with a tanuki pout on his face as he says, You're in a surprisingly good mood today. Well, yeah. Guess I am. Anyways, onto that idea. Do you think it'll work? He sighs again, not overly dramatic this time, and answers, probably. There is no way the noble demons would expect you to strike directly at Demon Isle, far away from the front lines. You'd have to sneak your way past the front lines and through all of the demon territory between here and there to do that. And that's no easy feat. Right. But going through Tartarus is a ridiculous idea, but certainly not without merit, Tar says, his voice sounding slightly exasperated this time. If you enter a Class 4 gate beyond the front lines to Tartarus and travel through Tartarus until you reach the Class V gate in Demon Isle, assuming you manage to make it through the gate undetected by the demons, you could very well deal a lot of damage to them. He frowns slightly. And we both know your grandfather isn't going to stop you whether he finds you or not. Yeah. Not to mention that I'd be using up some of the gate's energy. Although probably not much of it. Now I just have to convince everyone of this plan. That might be the hard part, Tar comments, making me nod my head. That it might be. No, Amelia says without letting me explain anything the moment I mentioned my plan to her. And Alan just looks at me with a tired frown on his face as he says, Did you really abandon a changeling to me to come up with this ridiculous plan? Hey! It's not ridiculous. I exclaim, crossing my arms from my place back in Alan's office as the three of us completely ignore the changeling that is currently tied up in the corner. A changeling I may or may not have forgotten earlier. You absolutely forgot him, Tar comments, sounding more than a little amused. Okay, so I forgot him. Sue me. He snorts. Really? Alan says, taking the lead against me. What part of going to Tartarus, where your grandfather would immediately find you, is a sound idea? You're the only hope we have in this war. Well, you don't have to worry on that front, because Gramps won't stop me from doing anything, I tell him with a light shrug. And when he's about to argue with that fact, both Tar and Amelia nod their heads in agreement with a short, yeah, and, she's right, making him shut his mouth immediately. Deciding to explain, I say, I could tell just from our negotiations that Gramps isn't feeling entirely into this war anymore. Not when I've given him an out that he can take, and not when he knows I want the war to end. So he won't stop me from doing what I want. I purse my lips and glance to the side as I add, although he might drop by for a visit and talk my ear off for a while. Tar snorts at that, Meanwhile, I notice a frightened look showing on the bound changeling's face for some reason. Alan closes his eyes and rubs his temples with a sigh. That's not the issue, Amelia says after calming down. Although I still see the corners of her lips trying to quirk upwards. The problem is if one of the demon lords aside from your father find you and capture you. While your father and grandfather won't do anything to stop you, they also won't just let you go if some other demon manages to capture you as long as the demon treats you well. They'll just make it a challenge for you to escape on your own again. I raise a brow at that and comment, and why exactly should I be worried about that? It's not like I'm planning on being captured, and the same would happen here on Earth. And besides, I grin, you knights managed to conceal yourselves while on Tartarus, so why can't you do the same to me? Amelia opens her mouth to reply, only to close it again when another voice enters the conversation. Why, my lovely pup, I would love to help you. Everyone in the room turns to find Black just lying down tossing a ball into the air on one of the sofas, somehow having made it there without a single one of us noticing. You can knock, you know, Alan mutters without much conviction. Black ignores him as he says, come on out, Gabs. If this was what you pulled me out here for, I will agree, Purple says after suddenly appearing in the corner of the room. But for some reason I feel like she's been there for a while. Just that we never noticed her for some reason. Seriously, there's a door, Alan mutters once again, but just like the last time, he's ignored. Why are you willing to help her? Amelia asks, sounding slightly defensive as she moves between me and Black, apparently not worried about Purple behind us. Black just catches the ball once more and looks at her with a raised brow while saying, I mean, I owe her a couple favors, now don't I? He glances at me with an amused smirk on his face. You never did check in on those, little puppy. Do not punch him in the face. Do not punch him in the face. Do not punch him in the face. I take a deep breath and let it out. Then I make eye contact with him and smile, saying, so you'll help me stay hidden on Tartarus? Yep, he exclaims, a bright smile stretching across his face as if my own smile made him happy. Then he nods towards Purple and adds, and Gabs here will too. He leans in towards me and whispers, acting like everyone in the room can't hear him, she owes me a teensy little favor. Wait, the Purple Knight owes the Black Knight a favor? I glance at Purple, only to find her eyes still closed just like they've been since we first saw her here. And I only just now notice that she's in her young form, the woman wearing all purple of a very pale shade that matches her long hair, with her glowing purple eyes sticking out under the cowl of her robe even with her eyes closed, proving unable to keep the purple light hidden behind her eyelids. Wonder what he did to get her to owe him. Normally the Purple Knight is completely detached from regular affairs of Earth. Out of nowhere, Black appears right in front of my face, the cowl of his cloak up over his face and a mask of shadows covering anything and everything underneath it except the glowing blue eyes that I can see peering through the shadows. So are you ready, Scarlet Ardesker de Arcaren, daughter of the Blood Calamity and granddaughter to the Demon King? Black's voice comes out distorted, and his tone instantly makes me realize that his personality has switched. Oh shit. Then a wave of shadows spreads out to cover the room before I find myself and everyone else right in front of a Class 4 gate located somewhere in demon territory. And the moment I say, I'm ready, I feel myself being pushed towards the gate. I turn back around to look behind me, only to find Black and Purple both raising their hands towards me as they begin chanting something. A ritual skill. Black and purple magic in the form of shadows and purple light begin to leave their hands before merging as they continue making their way towards me. Then the magic forms a thin layer over my body and fades away as if it never existed. May your hunt be fruitful, Black states, his voice devoid of emotion. Meanwhile Purple just nods her head. And without a word of warning, I feel myself being pushed through the gate with Amelia and Alan waving at me and shouting to stay safe. Several seconds pass in silence as I glance between Tar, who is still on my shoulder, then at the gate that's in the form of a large arc with red, black, and purple energy running through it, and then back at Tar. So, did that just happen? I eventually ask. It did, Tar replies with a nod of his head. You also forgot about the changeling again. Oh. Right. That guy. Well, guess he can enjoy his stay in Alan's office for a little while longer. I am starting to pity that poor changeling, Tar mutters, but I ignore him. Instead I look around my surroundings, finding it barren of any sort of civilization. Which makes me wonder why there's just an abandoned gate here. Did Black just kill everything here? He's the one who brought me to this gate, not the others. So did he just pass though and slaughter everything? I wouldn't put it past his other personality to do that. My thoughts pause as I feel some sort of suppressing sensation along with a gaze passing over me. Like someone is looking past this area from far away. Gramps. The gaze actually passes by me without stopping, so whatever Black and Purple did work to the degree that he doesn't know where I am, assuming he even knows it's me. Which he probably does. If I remember correctly, if this is the same protection Amelia and the other knights used when going to Tartarus, then it makes it so that while he does know the broad area they were in, he didn't know their exact locations. And he couldn't confirm their exact locations either. Not without actually sending someone or going himself. Hopefully he'll take the hint and not come over here himself. That would be annoying. I don't need a doting grandfather on this trip. He would probably cry if he heard that, Tar mutters, but I shake my head. Nah, he's the Demon King. He wouldn't cry from something as small as that. I'm sure of it. If you say so, Tar mutters, sounding like he isn't sure he believes me. He better not cry from something like that. If his citizens saw it, he'd lose more than a little. Okay, maybe he wouldn't lose any respect. Not considering how they all treat him as if he were a god. They'd probably just play it off somehow to make him look good while doing it. Fanatics are terrifying like that after all. Anyways, I transform into my quadrupedal beast form and immediately begin to run away from the gate towards the sounds of a city. Before I start heading towards the Class B gate, I'll have to figure out where I am. Then I can make my way there. And to figure out where I am, I'll need to enter a city. The Demon King's castle. Moments before Scarlet's arrival on Tartarus. Arcaz taps his foot as he looks out from his balcony at the army of demons standing in front of his castle. Each and every one of them is a Class 3 demon or stronger, and each one has sapience enough to stand in a formal line. But despite that, he feels disappointed by the group. Because he knows his beloved granddaughter will just tear through them the moment they enter the battlefield. I can't just stop sending lower class forces to Earth just because most of them will be wiped out, but at the same time, it feels almost like a waste. The Demon King taps his chin as he considers his options. He could always just send a couple extra class versus, specifically an Arachne, to deal with the plagues. And since they can't deal with it everywhere, Scarlet would still be able to rack up her levels. His thoughts come to a crashing halt when he feels a familiar mana signature pass through a gate into Tartarus. One that he hadn't expected to see for years. And one that has him grinning from ear to ear. But immediately after sensing it, the mana signature grows hazy. Which makes his grin morph into a frown instead. Because it's the same sensation he got from those damnable knights when they were waltzing around Tartarus while hiding themselves. So the Black and Purple Knights decided to send Scarlet to Tartarus for some reason while cloaked. The only thing I can think of for her to do here would be to either recover the Blue Knight's memories or head to one of the two Class V gates to cause trouble. Arcaz taps his chin a few times before turning around, the cape of his armor flying around him in the process as he snaps his fingers once, sending every last member of the army bowing before a massive orb of blood envelopes them all and then vanishes. And just seconds later, they all reappear next to various different gates all around the world, ready to be sent to Earth. I'll leave Scarlet be for now, but if she stays too long, then I will be paying her a visit. If for no other reason than to say hi. Arcaz very much follows the ideology of letting his children, and in this case grandchildren, do what they please. And if Scarlet wishes to traverse through Tartarus through her plans, then she can do it on her own without his interference. But if she expects him to just completely ignore her and not at least stop by for a visit, then she's sorely mistaken. I do wonder if Leon has sensed her as well or not. Probably not. His senses aren't as strong as mine. Especially not since he's focused his attention on blood runes all this while. The Demon King begins humming as he walks, a smile decorating his face at the thought of visiting his granddaughter again. A smile that grows even bigger when he realizes he'd be visiting her without Leon knowing. I can just leave my paperwork to Leon and go visit her in a couple weeks. He nods his head, his mind set on that plan as he leaves his room and heads towards his office. For now, I'll do the work he can't do. Then I'll leave the rest for him.